market, it will help us use our capacity.
Cool. I believe it's 9 a.m., at least it is by the clock I'm looking at. So good morning and welcome on this cold, blustery morning to the April 3rd, 2018 meeting of the Hutchinson City Council. Linda, would you call roll, please?
Dave Line.
Here.
Iris De Carvalho.
Here.
Soldner.
Here.
Inskeep.
Here.
Deckent.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kim Berry, good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you for offering prayer for us.
Absolutely. Let us pray together. God of the resurrection, as the cold winds blow outside, remind us, God, that you are with us during the storms of life, bringing life from the dead parts of our disappointments through the resurrection of new beginnings. Lord, direct our meeting today as diverse personalities work together to plan and make Hutchinson a better place for all. Give our leaders wisdom and guide them. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Next item.
Item 4, proclamations.
Well, we have a number of them this morning.
Yes.
I think first up, District Attorney Schroeder. I saw you come in. There he is. Good morning. Whereas Americans are victims of 20 million crimes each year, affecting individuals and communities, and whereas years of investing in crime victims' rights and services have developed a system of victim response that can help victims recover from crime, and reaching and serving all victims of crime is essential to supporting thriving communities, because those who receive holistic services and support are more likely to remain invested in their communities. And whereas dedicated victim service providers are working every day to meet the needs of crime victims, yet there are still too many victims without meaningful access to rights and services, and many victims face barriers such as isolation, distrust of authorities, language limitations, lack of transportation, or cultural barriers that keep them from accessing the services and criminal justice systems that can help them recover from crime. And whereas we must make a dedicated effort to expand the circle of those prepared to respond to victims and link them to the resources that can help them recover, and engaging a broader array of healthcare providers, community leaders, faith organizations, educators, and businesses can provide new links between victims and services that improve their safety, healing, and access to justice. And whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 8 to 14, 2018, provides an opportunity to recommit to ensuring that all victims of crime, especially those who are challenging to reach or serve, are afforded their rights and receive a trauma-informed response. And whereas the Reno County District Attorney's Office is hereby dedicated to strengthening victims and survivors in the aftermath of crime, building resilience in our communities and our victim responders, and working for justice for all victims and survivors. Now therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckent, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, do hereby proclaim the week of April 8 to 14, 2018 as Reno County Crime Victims Week, and reaffirm the City of Hutchinson's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and to express our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. Keith?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. I know it's just a piece of paper, but it means a lot to a lot of people. And so it'll have a special prominent place that we'll keep it at the courthouse. I accept this not only on behalf of the Reno County District Attorney's Office, but also the Hutchinson Police Department, the Reno County Sheriff's Department, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, police departments in Haven, in Bueller, and in South Hutchinson. Other organizations as well. We have the Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Center. The Hutchinson Regional Medical Center has a sexual assault nurse examiner or sexual assault response team based on behalf of them. On behalf of Horizons Mental Health Center's Child Advocacy Center. All these organizations look victims in the eye of violent crime on a daily basis. It means a lot to us. We appreciate it. We have a special candlelight vigil that's going to be held a week from today. It'll be held at 6:30 p.m. at South Hutchinson Community Center located at 101 West Avenue C. We would invite everybody to attend who can be there. Give us a special moment to pause and think about some of the victims of violent crime in our community. But again, this is very much appreciated, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike? Whereas children are key to the state's future success, prosperity, and quality of life, and while children are our most valuable resource, they are also our most vulnerable. And whereas children have a right to be safe and to be provided an opportunity to thrive, learn, and grow. And whereas child abuse and neglect can be prevented by supporting and strengthening Kansas families, thus preventing the far-reaching effects of maltreatment, providing the opportunity for children to develop healthy, trusting family bonds, and consequently building the foundations of communities. And whereas we must come together as partners so that the voices of our children are heard by all, and we are as a community extending a helping hand to children and families in need. And whereas by providing a safe and nurturing environment for our children, free of violence, abuse, and neglect, we can ensure that Kansas children will grow to their full potential as the next generation of leaders, helping to secure the future of this state and union. Now therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckant, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Mike? You're welcome.
Good morning. I'm Michael Woods. I am the supervisor for the Healthy Families Program for Reno County. It's a part of the Kansas Children's Service League. Kansas Children's Service League is the Kansas chapter for Prevent Child Abuse America. We just heard about crime, but I want to, and child abuse is a crime, but I want to focus more on the prevention aspects. That it's up to the communities and to the families to be able to support children in a healthy and positive way to eliminate, not reduce, but eliminate child abuse and neglect. I think with my experience with Hutchinson and Reno County, that is a focus that will continue to be, and I want to again thank the council for their recognition and support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mike, you get to stick around
I
for this one, don't you? Whereas the Reno County Early Childhood Council and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children, are celebrating the Week of the Young Child, April 15 through 19, 2018, with many activities to celebrate this event. And whereas, by calling attention to the need for high-quality early childhood services for all children and families within our community, these groups hope to improve the quality and availability of such services. And whereas, The future of our community depends on the quality of the early childhood experiences provided to young children today, and whereas high-quality early childhood services represent a worthy commitment to our children's future, now therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckand, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, do hereby proclaim April 15 through 19, 2018 as the Week of the Young Child, and urge all citizens to recognize and support the needs of the young children in our community. Again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Do you want to say a few more words?
Sure. I'll take it.
Take every opportunity, right?
I am a part of the, I should say Healthy Families is a part of the Early Childhood Council in Reno County. We have supported the Week of the Young Child for over 20 years. It started small and it has grown to where it is today. And again, the focus is our young children to be positive, to our families to enjoy their children and to enjoy the community. I have given you a flyer that shows you the different activities from the 15th through the 19th. It's to the zoo on Sunday and library on Tuesday, and we end with on third Thursday. And there are numerous events for the children and for the families. These are free events. There's no cost to them. Third Thursday is a great opportunity because of the different activities that will be involved. We will have tables set up with different agencies that support early childhood. If you are needing more flyers, you can contact me. You can contact your Early Childhood Center, United Way, to be able to get. We want to let our families know that there is a chance for them to enjoy themselves and their children. And we will, the Early Childhood Council has that focus in mind. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dave, somebody's coming up for the next one for fair housing? Yeah. Good, come forward, please. Whereas April 11, 2018 marks the 50th anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Act, Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, of which Title 8 declared that the law of the land would now guarantee the rights of equal housing and opportunity. And whereas the principle of fair housing is not only national law and policy, but a fundamental human entitlement. And whereas barriers that diminish the rights and limit the options of any citizen will ultimately diminish the rights and limit the options of all. And whereas the City of Hutchinson welcomes this opportunity to acknowledge the importance of fair and equal housing for all people, without regard to race, religion, color, age, sex, disability, national origin, ancestry, or family status. And whereas equal housing opportunity is a condition of life in our city that can and should be achieved. Now, therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckand, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, on behalf of its citizens, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2018 as Fair Housing Month, and express the hope that this year's observance will promote fair housing practices throughout the city. David?
I'm David Dove. I'm the chair of the Hutchinson Human Relations Commission, and we accept and thank you for this proclamation based on behalf of the commission. This marks the 50th anniversary of Title 8, commonly known as the Fair Housing Act. It was declared a national policy that fair housing be made available to all citizens on the basis of equality and fairness. I would also like to mention that the Hutch Human Relations Commission meets the third Wednesday of the month, and our meetings are open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Michelle, I think it's your turn. Come on up, please. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when any emergency occurs, the prompt response of law enforcement officers, firefighters, EMS, and all first responders is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property, and whereas the safety of our law enforcement officers, firefighters, EMS, and all first responders is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Hutchinson Reno County Emergency Communications E911 Center, a division of the Hutchinson Police Department. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services, and whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for our police officers and firefighters by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information, and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of the HRCEC E911 Center have contributed substantially to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now, therefore, I, Stephen A. Deckant, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of April 8 to 14, 2018, as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our citizens and city safe. Michelle?
I do, thanks. Thanks. I was so excited to get up here earlier, I jumped ahead of myself. I brought some of my team with me this morning. They're often unseen, but they are definitely a part of every single call for Hutchinson and Reno County. If I could get them to stand, please. I have Cassie, Dana, Melissa, and Eric. Sorry. We processed 127,000 calls last year on behalf of the city and the county. We take every call from the very beginning, and we monitor all those responders to the very end. Approximately, almost exactly a year ago, we had the large fires, and this dispatch team processed the same amount in 1 week that they normally do in 1 month, all at the same time maintaining their standards and meeting the 15-second call time answer. Very proud of this team and very proud of what they do on behalf of all the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to all who we had proclamations referring to this morning for the work that is done to make our community safer, to make it better, to help those who oftentimes are unable to help themselves and defend themselves. So many good and beneficial elements spoken about. Okay, next item.
Item 5, oral communications from the audience.
Okay, this is that time that we have an opportunity for members of the audience to address the council on matters that are not already on the agenda. We would ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, and please introduce yourself by name and your address.
May I hand out invitations? Should have done this early. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Sylvia Griggs. I live in the unit block of West 18th. I'm here today as a member of the Hutchinson Kennel Club, and we would like to invite all of you and the community to our open house to introduce our new building. There will be welcome bags for the first 100 guests. Demonstrations with scent work at 2 o'clock, obedience at 2:30, rally obedience at 3, and agility at 3:30. There'll also be door prizes, people treats, and information booths, so you can learn about the club and what we can do for your family and your animals. We are asking the public doesn't bring their own dogs to this event because we're hoping for a big turnout, but we will have events in the future where you can bring your dogs. Plus, we'd love to have you take classes from us. The event is Saturday, April 14th from 2 to 4 p.m. at 131 South Washington, and that is in South Hutchinson. So please join us.
Thank you.
I just want to know, do we have to learn how to sit and stay to get any of those people treats?
You have to be obedient.
Uh-oh.
We won't have you doing tricks at this time, but as
But
long as you're
obedience is
open later.
necessary. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? We got several. Okay.
Just a quick reminder from the Hutchinson Clinic. I'm Tracy Hansen, Director of Business Development and Marketing. We will be hosting a take-back day for opioids and other prescription medications. On April 28th, there will be a community reception. We invite everybody to come by. There will be refreshments, and there will be Hutchinson Police Department on site for the collections of all your unused prescription medications. Again, that's Saturday, April 28th, between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Come and go at the main Hutchinson Clinic location beside the pharmacy at 2101 North Waldron.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Something good for us all to remember.
Glad to see us doing that.
Morning, Jana.
Good morning, Jana McCarran, Director of Planning and Development, and I wanted to invite all of you to a town hall meeting on April 10th, 1 week from today, from 6:30 to 8 o'clock at McCandless School, where we will be discussing proposed infill zoning regulations for residential properties. So again, that's 1 week from today at 6:30 to 8 o'clock at McCandless School. There will be a second town hall meeting later on in the month, and I'll make another announcement about that.
So Jana, is this for input on those regulations
Yes.
to encourage infill?
Yes,
Great.
we'll have 8 stations. It should be a fairly interactive meeting, and Mayor Decken is going to be officiating, or
Wonderful.
he'll be participating. He'll be leading the meeting. So,
Great.
yeah.
And did we invite the contractors to that meeting?
Everyone's invited.
Okay.
I mean, we didn't send a specific invitation.
Okay.
We've been marketing through Facebook.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jana. Morning, Ryan.
Morning. My name is Brian Bird. I live at 1506 Brookwood in Hutchinson. And I'm here representing the Kansas Soaring Association. We're a group of pilots who are, the purpose of our organization is to promote the sport of soaring in the state of Kansas. We fly out of the old Navy base in Yoder. We've been flying out there for probably 40 years or so. Nice big facility, about a 7,000-foot runway, lots of room. But recently we have acquired that property and set up a foundation. I got to keep this down to 5 minutes, so I won't get into a lot of that. But our plans for the next few years is to improve that property and make this a facility where people from other parts of the country will come to compete in soaring contests. We've given a few soaring contests in the last 5 years, but now our plans are to do one every year. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, maybe some of you have no idea what these are, sailplane is a lot like look very similar to a fixed wing powered aircraft, but it has no motor on it. We tow them aloft with another powered aircraft, and then we use the rising air currents, and we can literally fly hundreds of miles in these things in a matter of just a few hours. And in these contests, we take off, we tow at about 2,000 feet, and usually fly for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, and make a distance maybe 100 or 200 miles, and whoever gets around the fastest gets the most points. They last about a week or so. So our first the contest we're going to have this year will be a regional contest. Just means that anybody in the country can compete. It doesn't have to be people local. We have probably, I think right now we have about 6 or 7 people signed up. We anticipate having about a dozen. That contest is going to start on the 9th of June, and we'll go, that's a Saturday, and we'll continue on to the following Saturday. So it's Saturday the 9th to Saturday, June 16th. HCC has graciously allowed us to use the Pioneer Hall for our daily pilot meetings, and we'll be flying every day. We'll launch about noon or so, and the gliders should be coming back around, anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe some of those stragglers might not get back till 6 or 7. But anyway, it's anyone's invited to come out and take a look and watch what's going on there. Although once the gliders take off, they're gone. There's not much to look at until they come back, I guess. But anyway, just where we're going with this, and we plan on doing this every year from now on. And next year we're going to try to bid on a national contest, which will probably, I would anticipate bringing at least 20 to 30 sailplanes. So we're probably going to get about a dozen this year. But if we are successful in getting the national contest, we want to try to get this contest going, see how things work. There's a lot of bugs to work out, but once we get the experience of doing that, we can host national contests, which had been done in the past. In the late 70s and early 80s, they hosted some national contests here, but that kind of fell by the way, but we've got some enthusiastic people that are willing to do that. Our hope is that there's an international competition coming up in about another, I think in 2022, I believe, and we're hoping to bid on that. If we do, we may that could really get a lot of people here. So we thought that it might be interested in the city council to know about what's going on there, and so I appreciate your time.
Good luck on the international competitions.
Yeah.
That would be great.
We do have a 2-seater out there, so if you really want to go try this out for yourself, most of these planes that are flying only have 1 seat, but we do have some 2-seaters, so we love to give rides. So, thank you. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Morning, Andy.
Order.
I like your notebook, Andy.
Arthur Andy Anderson, 424 Cary Street. I've got some photos. What I'm questioning today, or my concern is Katy and Porter Street. I'm getting a lot of Katy Street, actually, at the intersection of Porter, behind the McDonald's.
Thank you.
By the Holiday Inn.
I knew Porter. I was trying to find Katy.
Is that a privately owned or city owned is my first question. The potholes on that thing are tremendous. They've stuck cones in there, and you see this much of the cones sticking out. I mean, they're really, really bad. And I'd like to know who's responsible for that. I get a lot of questions about that on the Common Sense Hutchinson website.
I'm sure that's us.
It's a private.
It's private.
Is it private?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
So
You're talking about the road right behind the McDonald's that
Yes,
goes
sir.
to Common.
Behind a couple
Porter Commons.
restaurants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That was all developed when that housing unit was all developed back there, and then, of
Yeah.
course, the commercial strip there. It's been a problem for years.
Yes.
And we've tried to have communications with the developer, but what happens in time is people leave and they tend to forget. And it's a good example of when developments happen that you're careful about what streets are private, just to ensure the long-term maintenance of that. But it is a private road, private street.
Is there anything we can do to force their hand on that? Like we did at the mall, for instance, to pressure them?
The best thing I've tried to, but getting property owners together is difficult, but the owners of those businesses, you would hope, would be more concerned about that than anyone, particularly with the Holiday Inn there now. And so maybe getting that group together. I think we had tried at one time trying to kind of rally that group up and look at, because it really needs to be totally ripped out and redone and do an assessment like we do on other streets. And that's really probably what needs to happen, because you're right, that one hole is probably one of the larger ones in the country, and it just
yeah, you can lose a Volkswagen.
yeah, it's
Well, not to put anybody on blast, but to totally put anybody on blast. Who are we talking about if we were to reach out to somebody, if the residents in that area were?
well, it'd be the developer, the owners of Porter Commons. It would be the interesting thing is, not knowing the history of that, is that a lot of those businesses, McDonald's, the Holiday Inn, they built there probably not even knowing that that was really a private drive. It was originally built for Porter Commons, the subdivision, the housing units there, and but that's just one of those things. And so it really probably needs to be that group of ownership, and somebody takes some leadership there that would get others interested in hiring a contractor to make those improvements. And, it probably needs total depth repair. It's pretty bad, so.
So the process would be to contact the admin at Porter Collins, who could put you in touch with the developer or owner?
Which we've done before, and not
No results.
a lot of real good results.
But if the businesses got together, it'd probably be.
Yeah. And we can again reach out and see, finding who that responsible party is, and kind of go from there. But, right now, it's like, it's not mine, so
Yeah.
that's kind of where it's at. It's nobody's.
When was the last time that we made contact as the city? Some time ago.
3 years ago, maybe.
This has come up before.
Yeah, a couple, 2 or 3. And
Yeah.
it seems like to me they may have done something, but just temporary, so. But we can do a little bit of research on the ownership group of that, and then it gets to be who's responsible for it, so.
I mean, it's a private road, but it's not by any means private property, right? I mean, obviously, by definition,
It's not a dedicated public street. It is.
So it is private
Private
property.
it is then by
Yes.
default. Okay, so I don't know. I mean,
Remember, we had the other issue right across the street when and we warned about that being a private drive and having a street name to it. We ultimately gave them a street name, if I recall, and that'll be the same issue, 20 years from now. Whose is it? It's that developer's.
Okay.
Would that fall under the nuisance law?
I'm sorry?
Would that fall under nuisance, the nuisance law?
Well, it's not a public nuisance, it's private property.
So it'd be
But private property falls under the nuisance law.
Well, whether or not they maintain their private road is their problem and their liability.
Well, I think he's talking about the International Property Maintenance Code, which, is that what you're talking about?
Well, if you read the nuisance law, it's anything that's unsightful will cause harm, and it's private property. I mean, I got called up on that, on my private property, so if that's private property, why wouldn't it fall under the nuisance law?
Any thoughts, Paul?
Well, I got a thought and it doesn't apply.
I mean, nuisance is, junk, weeds, houses falling down. Typically, we don't deal with, potholes and those kind of things through that city code. But, so I doubt, I tend to agree with the city attorney, I doubt that we would apply anything there. So.
Well, why don't we, as City Manager Deardoff recommended, why don't we see as a city if we can reach out to the developer and see what can be done? Ultimately, I'm not sure there's a lot we can do to force their hand, but sometimes that pressure from the surrounding businesses is what needs to happen.
Okay.
I'm sorry we can't just fix it, but it's
Alrighty.
not ours to fix.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Anyone else? Next item, please.
Item 6, consent agenda.
Could we briefly discuss item B before consideration of the agenda?
Certainly.
And I don't know if this question would be for Merrill.
Did you say B as in boy?
Yes.
Okay.
I was wondering if you could remind us of the allocation process on these subsidies, and also is HRAH still loosely coordinating these groups and these funds, and how's that working now with?
Good morning. I'm Merrill Dye, the Assistant City Manager. As far as I know, the Hutchinson Reno Arts and Humanities Council is still functioning as a board, although they don't have a part-time director any longer. Their director resigned or retired, I believe, in December of 2017. One of the roles that group plays is to make recommendations to the City Council on the distribution of cultural activity funds. And as you might recall, both the funds that the Arts Council receives and the pot of money for the cultural arts groups are two different sets of monies, two different pots of monies, but each one of those was cut by $5,000 for 2018 during the budget process. And so Andrea Springer, who is the president or the chairperson of the Arts and Humanities Council, was made aware of that reduction, and I gave to her a spreadsheet that if our finance director and I were, trying to redistribute that, cut in funds so that everybody kind of takes a hit. I made up a spreadsheet. Angela looked at that, and I provided it to Andrea Springer. They made their own decision separate from that. They have a process where they interview each of those groups, and they evaluate them and assign scores. And so they did provide a recommendation to the city in writing. And so these contracts in the consent agenda are a result of what they had recommended.
Okay.
Now, you can change it up, but, we pretty much followed what that group has provided in recommendations in the past.
Thank you. I was wondering if it was still functioning that way without a director.
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it, Jade, on that item?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
Anything else before or a motion on the consent agenda?
I would move to approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Iros De Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes.
Item 7A, consider annexation of property in Cherry Hills Addition.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. Council, you have before you a proposed petition and consent for annexation of a tract that is coming up on the screens above. This petition and consent is by consent of the landowner, that being Strawn Development, Inc. And when that's the case, the annexation process is reduced substantially. First of all, it's an annexation by unilateral action, and it is basically by right. And you see that quotation of the statute in the memo, and there's a copy of that statute. It says the land adjoins the city, and a written petition for consent to annexation is filed with the city by the owner, and that has been done. Also, when that is the case, when it's a petition by the owner of the property and the owner consents, then it waives other requirements within the statute, particularly for a plan for extension of services. When it's by consent of the owner, that is waived. Also, what is waived is a resolution setting a public hearing and providing notice of that public hearing and having the public hearing itself. So this is the only procedure that's required before the council. These matters are reviewed by city staff first. Basically, I just have city staff take a look at it to see are there any problems with this. The ultimate standard for annexation of this type is it in the best interest of the city and the landowner. And the Kansas Supreme Court has said that these procedures are for the protection of the landowner against unilateral action by a city annexing their land, and Strawn Development, Inc., is the owner of the property and does consent. I think that's about all I have, except to show you the Cherry Hills addition. Council, you're not approving the plat.
No.
That's just a diagram to show you where the property is located that is being annexed. The plat is not before the council. Zoning's not before the council. Special assessments aren't before the council. The only issue is annexation. That's all I have, unless you have further questions.
And the only part being annexed is the dark part in that corner, right?
No.
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 It's those lots that are laid out
Yes,
there.
I
Is that
know, but
correct?
I mean, it's not everything to the west. It's just those lots.
Yeah, they're outlined,
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Does that include any of the property north of those lots, 243rd Street, in the annexation request?
Yeah, let Jim answer that.
Come on.
Jim Strawn, 507 North Whiteside. The annexation, we've communicated with the county to try to get the city to annex all the way on up to 43rd. And the city really didn't wish to move forward with annexing 43rd Street. And I hope you can hear me. Let me get that up here a little bit. So what I believe we did, I think we went to the center of the power line. There's a 100, I think it's 100 or 150 foot easement, and I believe we are annexing to the center of that power line.
Jim,
We're up to it.
You're tall enough. Can you kind of point that out on the screen?
Right to there.
Okay,
Right to there?
okay.
Now, that area in the upper right-hand corner,
That's drainage.
that's going to 43rd, isn't it?
Yes.
And in a little sliver, the way it looks, there in the center of the screen is also going to 43rd, correct?
Is that where the drainage?
The drainage area?
This will go up to 43rd Street.
Right, and that part to the...
now, but it's dirt.
It's dirt, right.
It gets to be in pretty rough shape. This is there's a drainage from back when Westar ran their power plant. They discharged water, went to several different ponds, went there to the door. But their discharge pipe is right here, and it discharged into an area here where it had what I call just a wet area. From there, it was piped, and it went up through this, across 43rd, and it went clear up to by the door. And this will stay open because Westar does not want to change they don't want to eliminate their easement for drainage.
Okay.
And so what we did, working with the city, the streets that we're tying into tie in here and here that are asphalt, right about in here. And we're just asking to annex so we can put the street in asphalt. And by working with the city, they allowed us to go back to where we were able to do a ditch because it matched up with the other areas, the other streets that we're tying into. And so by that, we've redesigned the drainage, and this is actually drainage and detention pond.
Okay, so
For
you've
storm-
done a drainage study, and
Yes,
that
ma'am.
says that's going to be the best
Yes.
place. Okay.
And this subdivision has been designed before, and then we changed it a little bit by moving a road. And so we're showing what we're going to do here, but we have expansion thoughts for later. And I hope I answered your questions.
Those lots, acreage-wise or depth-wise,
Right now,
what are
the
they?
ones we have are, I think they're about 150 by probably 200.
150 by
Pretty
200?
good-sized lots, yeah.
And there's 9 lots, am I counting correctly?
I see 8.
Yeah. And then we're hoping, we think right now we're going to go ahead and asphalt up to 43rd Street. And that's kind of what our thoughts are because that 43rd Street gets pretty, where it turns in right there, it gets pretty muddy, and they've had some issues out there.
Okay.
And although it's not platted, this annexation is for those 8, what you've now got drawn as 8 lots only?
Correct. We're
And
hoping
the
to actually,
drainage area?
working with the county, a lot of people have changed regulations. We're hoping we can get an entrance in here on 43rd to get a couple more lots up there, but that would be in the county. I think we have to have about 3.5 acres up that way.
If this were to be approved, what would your next steps be in terms of the schedule and your timing?
I think
of
we're
the
just kind of
annexation?
moving forward. I don't remember how long ago we bought this. We may have bought it about a year ago, and we've done quite a bit of redesign on it.
Well, they'll have to go through the platting.
You have to go through the platting process, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which hasn't.
Right now, our step is to get it annexed into the city.
We just bought a lot of 43rd. I use bought as an expression, but where do we stop on 43rd Street? Is it at the bridge or prior to Old 61? The area of 43rd that we just got from the county.
Well, we have some land.
Is it 61?
Yeah, we have some land on Lucille that goes up to what they call the Brigadoon area. And we had the front 20 acres of that annexed into the city. And that's kind of the property line where it stops up on the
in that area, if that's what you're talking about. Brigadoon is not in there, in that area. So this, we're moving the property line up further to the north.
Dave, I didn't understand your question. You're talking about the city
We took over
limits?
maintenance of the roads.
Right.
Took over maintenance of the road, right. Okay.
But not
That'd be
till
west of K61.
K61.
Plum over to how far west of 61 then?
Yeah, well, from Plum to K61.
To K61.
basically.
Yeah.
61. Or
Old
old 61.
K61.
Old 61.
Okay.
If you need anything else, I'll be.
You'll be right there. Okay, thanks. I know we have some folks in the audience that that would like to address that issue. Before you, Tom, anything else for the council at this point?
I had one question, just on annexation in general. Is there an analysis process for kind of an ROI versus maintenance of the roads long-term? So what I'm talking about is the roads will be put in. I'm assuming there'll be improvements, which will be assessed to property owners. And then long-term, we maintain those roads. Is that the process?
That would be correct.
And so, is there any annexation analysis process for what we get back versus what we pay out when we annex? I'm just thinking of the Heidi district. I know this is nothing like the Heidi district, but I don't know if that was a net positive, is what I'm saying. I wasn't on council when that was done. But do you understand that question?
We do not have a formal return on investment process. I think in reality, if we were looking at 100 lots here, we probably would have a lot of those questions just based on the way development has occurred in Hutch. We know that. We're talking about 8 lots here. Probably not, a question, at least in my mind, as to what the return on investment would be for that. So, the development community tends to realize how much, they're going to invest to make their investment. So that's a lot. We rely on that quite a bit. But no, we do not have a formal process in determining what we annex. We go through an annexation plan. You talked about the Heidi district, and that was a significant amount of valuation that did come into the city through that process. But we also assumed, a lot of additional responsibilities going forth there. So.
Okay. Thank you, John.
Related, John, to that, then how much responsibility for either outright construction or ongoing maintenance will we be assuming if we annex this?
Well, typically, on a development like this, the developer is going to, I'm assuming, go through a special assessment process for all public utilities, water, sewer, streets, just like we've done on Oxford Point and other developments. And then there's a bonding process that pays for that, and then that debt retirement is assessed to the adjoining properties. But the city does assume full responsibilities of that infrastructure once we approve the final inspection. And that's why we require developers to build streets to city standards, to build water and sewer to our standards. A lot of the area we annexed out there over the years were roads that I think were probably built under county standards, which is a lot different. And there's a reason why we require certain standards so that those streets stand up in time.
So in theory, if we didn't annex this project could still be done through the county with lower standards on the roads?
Well, I think the issue would be typically when they would, water and sewer would be a need for this.
Yeah.
And because the lots aren't big enough for septic, those kind of things. And so the city's policy in the past has been if you hook on to public water or sewer, you sign a release that we can annex you if, and typically we've done that. But we do have properties where people are on city water and sewer but aren't annexed in the city because it's just one, property out somewhere. So.
Okay.
If these roads were to be paved, would there be any existing properties that would be assessed?
All adjoining properties would be assessed.
Okay. So the ones that they have intentions of building, but then anybody who's existing there as well.
based on the benefit that those properties, I mean, it's a statutorily set up to where, you've got to share the benefit, you share the cost of that.
Sure, okay.
Council, anything else at this time? Okay. Who wants to stand up first?
I'll do it. I'm Tom Sanders. I'm normally the Human Resources Director addressing the council, but today I'm the property owner of 4010 Cherry Hills Drive with me and my wife. And just for your reference, that's this section here on the map. Currently, we are in the county. Couple things that are, as we're looking through this whole process, and if you'll indulge me a little bit, I'd like to just talk about this whole process that I've encountered as a citizen so far. About a month and a half ago or so, we got a phone call from Dan Garber. Dan's a great guy. We know him personally. Just random out of the blue. He said, hey, do you guys want to be annexed in the city? He was talking to my wife. Provided no details, no information whatsoever. We were like, well, no, we don't know anything about what you're wanting to do. Fast forward a few weeks later, I'm in a staff meeting as a director with the city manager and other directors, and I learned that Jim Strawn is wanting to annex this portion of his property into the city. What really bothers me about that is that had I not been a director, nobody in this room would know anything about this. Nobody. So I just think that's a very, very flawed process. I worked with Gianna. I met with her, kind of got a bigger sense of what was planned in the area and what's not being shown, and I'll hand this out. We got several pieces of data here. It is the broader plan for the development, and that immediately kind of set off bells and whistles in my mind about what was being planned for the area. After seeing that, I told Jana, I told John, I told Paul that we would not be in favor of the annexation, even though Strawn was seeking to have that done on a voluntary basis. I also decided to, hey, I need to take off I'm not a staff member. I can't approach this as a staff member. I need to approach this as a citizen. So I did an open records request, trying to gain some more information about the city's interaction with Jim Strawn through this whole process. And it's already been mentioned, I found some very interesting information came out of that. And first and foremost, which is just, to me, I have to just be honest, is crazy to me that the city does not have a process to analyze annexations, regardless if they're voluntary or involuntary. And that just seems to me to be kind of crazy. Because as most of you know, anything related to planning, and this is really a planning issue, this is not a legal issue, this is really a city planning issue. We have all kinds of processes around far less significant issues. I mean, things like a fence variance. I think Wendy Hobart's in the audience here. She could tell you about her experience about building their house and their chimney being in the flight zone for the airport and what they had to go through. So here's a big annexation that's going to happen, and we're not engaging the public whatsoever and the stakeholders, and that just doesn't sit right with me, and I don't think it's set right with the neighborhood. So again, while this was perfectly legal, I think, I've worked with Paul a lot. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that just because something's legal doesn't necessarily make it right, and it also doesn't necessarily lead to making good decisions. And I can tell you, when I shared this information with our neighbors, they were all pretty stunned about what they were seeing. Part of what you're not seeing on this map is phase 2, which, quite frankly, is probably the part that scares folks the most. It's been flagged as high-density housing. Nobody really knows what that means, but it's certainly out of character with the neighborhood, whether you're talking the Spyglass area or the Brigadoons area. through this whole process, I also learned that basically nobody at the city has really done an in-depth analysis of this property. Engineering has not looked at the flood study, has not done a flood study. They have not done a traffic study. But yet we're looking at potentially adding 120 housing units to the area. Now, this is the small part, but there's a much bigger part of all that that's interconnected to that, has interfacing infrastructure. So to look at this as in a vacuum, in my mind, is just very myopic by the city, and we need to step back and look at the broader plan. And I would also say, you know, what this whole process, I think, has been very alienating, very marginalizing to the group of citizens that live out here. I mean, we're all just kind of stunned that this is happening and nobody knows. So, you know, I've provided you, and Paul referenced, you know, the annexation statutes. If this was a forced annexation, we would have, as a city, go through a much more elaborate process. You know, there need to be public notice, there need to be hearings that need to go to the Planning Commission. The reason why you do that is so all of this gets vetted out and good decisions get made. And so why we are not doing it in this case is just, I don't get it. It's beyond me. I think we need to use a much more deliberative process that's transparent. I think that's the only way that we can ensure that we're making good decisions. Some really fundamental, really fundamental questions have not been asked by staff, or excuse me, asked by staff or answered by staff. And they're as simple as, you know, again, what is going to be the cost of this new development? You know, Jim Strawn said, and we all know, that the only reason why he wants to bring this annexation is to develop it. That's great, but what's going to be the city's cost and all that? Is this compatible with the existing neighborhoods? If not, why is it being recommended, a different housing density being recommended here, and why is that deemed to be desirable? Are there any environmental issues in the area? You know, Brigadoons is to the north of us. I believe they are all on septic. You know, this, especially phase 2, will be abutting that. Are we setting ourselves up for another Prairie Hills situation or other environmental issues? I don't know. I don't think anybody in this room can answer that question. So the list kind of goes on and on about those kind of basic things.
Tom, can I ask a question while you're gathering your thoughts?
Yeah.
Is the housing density that different in this phase?
The short answer for me is I don't know. Looking at the lots, it certainly seems like it's much more consistent with the density of the neighborhood, but we've got no information that what will be built there is actually compatible with the neighborhood.
And the platting process does require approval by the Planning Commission, is that correct?
Yep. The platting process requires approval by the Planning Commission. It also requires traffic studies. It also requires drainage studies. So we've done that on every development that has occurred. So it's not like we're not planning to do that on this development. That's just the phase of it. So
and
that's
remind
all done.
me, thank you, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
Does the platting process notify the public?
Jana, you want to talk about just the steps that we go through on that? Yeah.
And Jana, if you could also touch, I know you've worked in other cities. This is unique. Tom, I respect your comments about how unheard of it is that the public wasn't notified, but I think what makes this unique is that it's a voluntary annexation. And I don't know if voluntary annexations are handled in a more transparent way in other communities. Are we pretty much in line? Is our process or lack thereof pretty much in line with others?
I'll start with the plats.
Okay.
So platting does not require notification of the public.
Okay.
But it does require Planning Commission approval and City Council approval. That's because state statute doesn't require it, so we revised our subdivision regulations to not require it. However, because this property has to be zoned, and the zoning for it would be R2 because of the size of the lots, that does require notification to the public. There will also need to be a community comprehensive plan amendment, map amendment, and that requires notification. So people within 1,000 feet on the county border and 200 feet on the city border would be notified as part of the zoning.
Okay.
then to answer your question about annexations, one of our comprehensive plan strategies, which we were scheduled to start in January of next year, was to work on an annexation policy. The city does not have one. I don't know, I didn't look at other cities in the state of Kansas. I can tell you in the state of Wyoming, planning handles annexations. But Kansas, you know, if it's unprotested annexation, the city attorney's right. If someone wants to annex the city, normally states just say, great, you know.
Okay.
Welcome. But, you know, I think most of the stuff we're talking about has to do with development of the property.
Yes. Yes. Well, I think it would be remiss of us not to look one step ahead, because it wouldn't be fair to the developer for us to annex and then not let him do anything on that property.
Yeah.
You know, so I can understand why people are looking in the future, even though this is really just about annexation.
Right. It's
well, I appreciate your insights on that.
Another question, Janet, if you mentioned something about a change to comprehensive plan. What is it currently?
Well,
It's not included because it's in the county.
No, it is.
Oh,
We
okay.
included area within our area of influence.
Okay.
And this property, we were aware that the developer was planning to develop this, so the owner was planning to develop this, so it is designated high-density residential.
That's what it.
So this piece would have to be low density because the zoning would be R2, and that would not be compatible.
So our comp plan already has it as high density.
Including this small section that we're looking at today?
Yes.
So the change would be from high density to
Low density.
R2, lower density? Okay. Anything else for Janet at this point?
And if I could piggyback on that comment, I saw that in the comprehensive plan myself and inquired about it just because it sticks out like a big red thumb, and went to Jana and asked her, so why is this low-density area all of a sudden got this pocket of high-density area? Where did that come from? And she said, well, that's what Jim Strong wants. So that's why it's there. So it's not that there was some grand scheme that this is a needs analysis and so on and so forth, that, hey, we need to put high density here. It's just what Jim Strong wanted. So that said, the other big question, I think the elephant in the center of the middle of the room is this annexation really necessary to fill a community need? That, you know, because there's going to be costs involved. This development plan is not a small, insignificant matter, and we want to make sure that whatever's done, whether it's here or anywhere else in the area, that we're protecting the quality of life, the safety and property values of the surrounding neighborhood. The fact that stakeholders have not been really engaged in this process, and when I mean stakeholders, I mean surrounding neighbors, to me it's just, I'm sorry, but it's unconscionable. And I'm really disappointed that the city has chose to go down this path. So with that off my chest, I would also say, you know, the big issues that I've heard when I've talked to my neighbors, and certainly I share these concerns, is that, again, outside of this area, we're looking at, or in total, we're looking at adding 120 lots. The vast majority of these lots are going to be high density. And it's very much a big departure from what's surrounding in the neighborhood. And again, there has been no explanation from the city staff or the developer as to why this variance in housing density is somehow deemed to be desirable or good. The second big issue, again, with this, maybe not such a big issue, but if that were to occur, and I think we have to assume that it will, we are going to have major traffic issues in that area. Again, in my public records request, I specifically asked about flood control and traffic, and the response I got back from the engineering folks is that, no, we haven't looked at it. I don't get that, but that's whatever. I don't think you have to be a traffic engineer to figure out that tripling the number of houses in that small area is not going to have a negative effect on traffic in the area. I went by the neighborhood the other day and counted, you know, in that corridor between Cherry Hills to Lucille and from 30th on Inverness to Spyglass, there's 57 houses. Those areas are going to become much more heavily trafficked. And if that's not bad enough, I think it's important to note that the existing roads that are there, they have no shoulders, they have no sidewalks. There's a bunch of kids in the area that play, and a lot of people who walk and ride their bikes. So you're forced to use the road, and that's certainly going to impact pedestrian safety. And the other piece of it all, too, again, it's not really represented on these maps here, but on the stuff that I gave you, I kind of put notes there that this whole annexation and development plan is going to create two very atypical and, quite frankly, dangerous intersections. I don't see how any self-respecting qualified city engineer would ever design such a thing or recommend it for sure. It's just, I don't know what to say. When I saw that, I was like, we're creating this crazy offset intersection on Spyglass, which is already heavy traveled, and the intersection there isn't great to begin with. And then over in my neck of the woods, we're looking at adding, we almost need to put a roundabout out there to make it safe. We've already got 3 intersections converging into one spot now. We're going to eventually add a bunch of housing to the west, and we're going to have more traffic dumping out into that area. The sight lines are already poor. It will be a problem, I can guarantee you, as sure as I'm standing here. The other thing in my public records request that I found out was, again, Jim mentioned there had been a impact study related to flooding. This whole area is prone to flooding. I'm particularly familiar with the intersection of Jupiter Hills and Spyglass. It's known to the city, that's in the city already, it's known to the city to be a bad flooding area. Engineering has not looked at the flood study. They have not done their own flood study. So quite frankly, we don't know with what is there if that's going to be adequate size, or is it going to make the situation better or worse. Today, as we stand here, nobody can tell you that from the city's perspective. So I think that's a real concern.
Tom, I'm going to jump in for just a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of like to narrow the focus down a little bit, and I know that you're concerned about the anticipated further development to the west, and I'm not discounting that, but I think I'd like to try to narrow your focus to the specific amount of land that we're looking at annexing today, if you could.
Well, and I understand that, and I totally get it. I've struggled with how to properly articulate my concerns with that, because I really do think what we're really dealing with here is one development in 2 phases. And they have shared infrastructure. So what's going to happen in one is going to impact the other. And I think, again, Strawn's been very transparent in what he wants to do there, so I think we have to take him at his word. But my issues, again, are very similar to the broader context. We don't know the flooding issues. We don't know the cost of what it's going to cost to put roads in there. We don't know what it's going to do for traffic.
So on the road that would be let's say it's improved.
Yeah.
You would be assessed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On that.
Yep. Yep. And again, that's a real personal thing to me is that, I'm going to have to pay more money for that for sure. But part of where my heartburn comes from goes back to the original point of, do we need this annexation and will it be successful? I've provided you a handout, and I need to get one myself. I think
John, can you comment, or maybe Janet, how many homes are currently abutting that road existing that would be assessed maybe against their will?
Me.
Just you? Just you. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very simple answer. Yeah.
I thought so. I mean, we walked that area, and I didn't know if there were more than...
Now, having said that, south of the power lines, there's this area that's from Cherry Hills to the power lines to where this is being annexed. It's all dirt as well. So those property owners would probably need to get assessed as well. That's not part of that. It would make no sense to have this, 100-foot, or not 100-foot, 100-yard gap of dirt road.
For sure.
So outside of that, it's me, or us. Sorry, Chris. So we'd take a big hit on that for sure. And, we are not anti-development, but we want to make sure that whatever's developed out there is compatible, but it also is going to be viable. And that's, me, I'm a data-driven person. In this very short time that I had to respond to this, I tried to get as much information about, okay, what has the city done in the past for infrastructure costs for different housing developments? I focus on Strawn, but I don't think he's by any means alone. But the city has spent a lot of money building out infrastructure for residential development. And quite frankly, to be charitable, it's been a mixed bag of success. Oxford Point, there's currently 81 lots in the city limits, full infrastructure ready to go. So far, there's only been 5 houses built.
That not full infrastructure.
Not full infrastructure, but around the houses that have been
full infrastructure on 22 lots.
Yeah. So, but nevertheless, 5 houses have been built. Ashton Estates, as best as I could count. Again, I'm going off county records, which isn't the easiest site to navigate, and also Jim Strawn's. So I kind of went out there and I drove around trying to do the best head count I could. So it might be a little bit off. But again, we have 122 lots that are developable, and only 28 houses have been built, and this is going all the way back to 2006. Kissawah Village, it's probably the most built out of all of them. There's about, I didn't count the number of houses that have been built, but it's quite a few, but there's still about 20 vacant lots as far as I can tell. Then you go further out on Kissawah Coves. I don't know who owns that. Well, excuse me, Friend Construction. And I think it advertises as being twin homes and townhomes and smaller type things. As best as I could count, there's about 30 lots and only 3 houses have been built out there. Quail Ridge, which is another newer development, I don't know when that went into effect, but it has 24 lots and only 2 houses have been built. Sand Dunes, which is, again, out in our neighborhood. It has been, I think, more successful. It has 7 vacant lots and 13 houses have been built. Timber Lane, which is just to the west of it there, built by Borski, I believe. It has 4 vacant lots and 16 houses. And then Pine Dunes, which is a small little development just to the west of Inverness, has 1 vacant lot and 4 houses. So, point of all this being, we've spent, as taxpayers, a lot of money on infrastructure for housing development. I don't know that we're really at a point where we need to spend more. If you talk to any real estate agent, I think they would tell you that our market's very soft at all price points at this point in time. There's certainly no shortage of existing lots for a person to build out in our area, whether in the county or in the city. And I can tell you the land that's being asked to be annexed in right now has been for sale for over 10 years with no takers. We built our house 10 years ago in the lot that I referenced, and that land all around us has been for sale before we bought our lot and built. So if this is such prime real estate property, it begs the question, why hasn't somebody bought it and developed it? So to your point, Jade, where I get sensitive is I don't want to get charged a bunch of assessments and taxes for a development that all likelihood will not actually be successful. So, and maybe we'll have 2 houses out there. Is it really worth the cost of going through all of this for 2 houses? Again, city will have the infrastructure costs from here on out. So, I think that's just hard analysis that we need to really look hard at as a city. And I don't want to be preachy, but I do think it needs to be said. You guys as council members know we are in very difficult budget times. We've been deficit spending for 2 years now. Our population's not growing. We're under a tax lid. Property valuations, I've been barely keeping up with inflation. We've experienced significant private sector job losses over the last few years. Our retail sector is on its heels, and sales tax revenue was down about 4% last year. And as last week, of course, we are now battling to keep the state fair, which probably will require some additional public funding to keep. So with our history, with our budget situation and everything, is this the right time, right place to be expanding the city's limits, sprawl, costs that go along with that and everything else, when there's really no demonstrated need that we need to annex this property in? And I don't know if there's any others that would like to talk about this, but I'll kind of cede the mic here, but I would like to kind of leave you with one kind of parting thought. I'm married to a doctor, and I've always been impressed with the, excuse me, the overall kind of wisdom of the Hippocratic Oath, which can be summarized as first, do no harm. I think that's all we're asking here. So, with that, thanks for your time.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Before seeing if there's anyone else who wants to speak as Tom did, Jim, I've got one question, and maybe there's some others. What road improvements are you planning with this parcel of land that we're looking at annexing? If I heard you right, there's that going north to 43rd from that intersection.
Sherry Hills, maybe?
Pretty much what you see here, this cul-de-sac is in asphalt now.
Okay.
This is all dirt road, the people are driving through it, and it gets pretty muddy out there. This Jupiter Hills would come up here in town 43rd. This Cherry Hills, typically what we do is we'll asphalt halfway, or at least back to where we're getting ready to turn and expand, which I think you have drawings on there now, of how we're gonna do that. And then the asphalt will just come on around and tie in right here. And I think this is spyglass. And then we were planning on digging that pond.
Okay. And then also that, what is that?
And if you look at the actual, what we're looking to do back in here is we expand, time to Inverness. If you look at that, the impact is quite a distance from the look of the houses. Just if you could look at an aerial on it, I don't know what you have.
No.
There's quite a bit of homes that really aren't affected.
So you'll be improving
But what you see here
Jupiter Hills,
will be built.
Cherry Hills, and you're going to be going with Jupiter Hills up to 43rd.
Yeah. So it's only 8-9 lots.
And I guess related, a question for Jana. I know you're here someplace. So with our subdivision regulations, will sidewalks be required to go in with that road improvement?
We've already talked to Jim about this because these roads were installed with a rural standard. We would not require, the city would not be recommending, it would require subdivision variance, so ultimately the planning commission would have to make that call. But staff is inclined not to require sidewalks for this portion because they were developed as part of the Spyglass subdivision, which does not have sidewalks, which has, just like Tom mentioned, the roads with ditches. Also, something that I know hasn't been mentioned, these roads are already in the city. So Tom's property is actually an island. I don't know if you were aware of that, but the roads that we're talking about paving are already part of the city. They came into the city with the Spyglass annexation.
That extension of Jupiter, though, is not in the city right now, is it? Going to 43rd?
I think a portion of it is. I'm not sure how. I don't think it goes all the way to the 43rd, though. I'd have to go look at the map.
Phase 2 would, if Phase 2 were to be done, would come under new subdivision regulations and would require sidewalks.
Right. Phase 2 would require the sidewalks.
I'm sorry, say that, what?
Phase 2 would require, they'd be under the new subdivision regulations.
Right.
Yeah.
This is kind of a unique area where the roads are already in the city. So to make someone go back in and have to build that to an urban standard and acquire property from the surrounding property owners, including Tom, would be
prohibitive.
yeah. We didn't think that would be
So there's not,
fair.
there's not the easement or whatever that would allow for
No, I
road
don't think there's
improvement along
sufficient.
with a sidewalk?
Right. I don't know how big the right-of-way is there, but.
Well, I think the issue would be that, urban standard is curb and gutter, and then you've got, now you've got street and open ditch drainage. And I think in our policy, we, for some of the larger lots in the area, Woodlands is an example of that, where sidewalks just wouldn't make sense based on that, how that's built now. And so.
And if I may, I just also wanted to say, our zoning regulations say 0 about annexation. We have no authority that's given to us by you all. The planning department has no authority other than it says if property is annexed into the city without zoning, which would be the case here, it will default to R1 zoning. So even though it might be a great idea that we should do these analysis and all these, we don't have the authority right now. I know some cities do. I'm aware that Wichita does, but I have not researched to see, well, how much analysis do they do, what's required. Smaller cities probably are following state statute just like we have. So that's something we haven't really looked into, but I don't have that authority right now, which is why Paul is bringing this item.
And you said that the planning department is considering an annexation process as part of the policy.
It was in the comp plan, and that we would work with other departments and the city council and probably residents as well to figure out, well, what would that look like? And we were more interested on the side of, well, if we're providing water and sewer, should we have a policy that they have to annex? I know usually they do, but.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point, Jana. This is in no way the fault of our planning department or engineering, or I don't think you're trying to sweep anything under the rug, nor was Strawn. It's just, this is how it's done, whether it's right or not.
Right.
We could argue, but certainly no fault on you for just following the non-regulations that are there.
If I may, I'd like to offer a little different perspective while we're in, and I know we're focusing in on these 8 particular lots, but I want to give you just a little bit of history in terms of the process over the last 15 to 18 years as it has transpired in terms of the annexation of the Spyglass addition, the Muirfield addition, and Prairie Hills 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, what does that have to do with what we're talking about this morning? I think it's important that maybe we all understand that as a community, because of these annexations process that occurred back in 2000, year 2000, I've got a copy of the plan that Brian Clennon provided to me that shows that I think as a community and as neighborhood development in the northeast part of the city, I think one would agree because of this annexation process, we are a better community today, and we have much more orderly development and planning in this process, and I hope you would all agree with that. And so I went back through some of the archives of that annexation process, and back then there were issues with water quality, there were issues with septic system issues, and as a result of the annexation process that the City Council approved back in 2000, the process began that in this area of Spyglass, Muirfield, and Prairie Hills 1, 2, 3, and 4, there were 6 platted subdivisions, 163 tracts, 128 tracts that had homes, and 35 that had vacant lots. And these were all properties that were not in the city limits and were predominantly on private wells, and the problems were compounding as time went on, that those residents realized we needed to do something. So part of my point here this morning is to say that the annexation process, and this is just simply the natural progression, in my judgment, of a small additional annexation that prohibited us from allowing these various islands. And I think that has been my main concern, is that without orderly annexation, we potentially are going to create these islands with subsequent problems without municipal services. And as you look at the benefits of annexation in this 2000 annexation process of all these various tracts, these were some of the benefits that those folks who resided there did not previously have. They did not have Hutch Police Department services, and that was an agreement in the annexation that they would be provided, and we even expanded our police force to provide that kind of service. We improved fire protection with a new fire station at 43rd and Plum Street. We reduced sanitary sewer rates to those residents throughout these various subdivisions. And those county residents on private wells through annexation would provide and receive much higher standards of drinking water. That's a quality of life issue that I think is important, that we're better today than we were had this annexation not occurred. And then connecting to municipal water, as the report says, we provide residential property owners with fire protection through availability of water mains and fire hydrants. Now, what was the upside to the city of Hutchinson in this whole process? Through this annexation process, the city realized about almost $30 million of increased property valuations. Obviously, that was of benefit to the total city operation. The city has received continually ad valorem taxes, and we've expanded the tax base from the city at large. So my point here, I think, in talking a little bit of history is that this annexation that occurred back in 2000 has certainly been the springboard for wonderful, beautiful homes that have been built out there over the last 15 to 18 years because of this annexation process. And to me, this is just the next natural progression of that. So I hope we think through that a little bit, that we're not just simply isolating these 8 lots today, but that we can see the benefits of what was done years ago to what we're seeing today is orderly, planned annexation. And for those reasons, I hope we keep an open mind to this discussion this morning.
A question, dollars and cents always catch my eye. The 30 million, was that realized immediately, or is that over the 18-year process?
Well, the report indicates that once the annexation occurred in 2000, that the property valuations, the total appraised value for all properties and improvements within the area proposed for annexation is $29.7 million with an assessed valuation of $3.4 million. So a huge increase of valuation because of that annexation that was previously not on the tax rolls for the city of Hutchinson. And the city back then, based on that $29 million, $29.7 million valuation, generates about $108,000 a year to the city alone. So
Those properties that you were referring to?
Those properties that I'm referring to, right.
Well, that brings us back to, I guess, what the real issue is annexation. It's really hard for us to focus on just that.
Just that, right.
So, Tom, you're a little bit familiar with the process of platting and how that happens. Is it your opinion that there aren't enough public safeguards in that process? So if we did the annexation, Strawn's hands are pretty much tied with what he can do until he goes through the planning commission, the planning department, the commission, the council. Public hearing would be necessary for rezoning to R2. Do you not feel there are sufficient protections in that process?
To be honest with you, I'm not familiar with enough to really fully give you an honest answer. I am concerned about that, though. But John, you were talking about creating pockets, and I'm concerned about that too. And when you look at this annexation plan, and if you look at the broader annexation plan, we've got highly irregular borders being proposed. That's very atypical for the city, and I know it's frowned upon at the state level. They don't like to see that. I don't know that it's illegal per se, but one of the things we've talked about with my neighbors is that if we're going to do this, why in the heck aren't we doing it right? Why don't we go to 43rd, take it all? Make sure that the entrance and exits make sense from a traffic flow standpoint and all that. It seems like very much so that we are just kind of trying to shoehorn this in a way that I think is very harmful to the neighborhood. And I think we need to step back, look at the whole thing and say, you know, if the economic value is really there, if it's really needed, great, but let's go back and let's do it right. And right now, I don't think anybody can say that we are. You know, there's a big chunk of property that isn't going on the tax rolls with this annexation that belongs to Strawn. I want that deal. You know, so, and that's all to avoid, you know, having to take over 43rd. Again, if we think this is such a great deal, if we think the market need is there and so on and so forth, let's do it right. You know, I can't speak to the numbers that you provided in terms of what the city got out of those annexations in the past. I'd be interested to know, were those houses already built and we just bought them, you know, or were they built after the annexation? So I think there's a fundamental difference there in which path we maybe want to go, depending on how that question is answered. Right now, we're looking at prairie land, wildland area. There's nothing developed there other than our house. Again, that land has been on the market for over 10 years. I don't know anybody who would personally invest their own money in that without doing a lot more due diligence about how is this actually going to get built out.
John, I had a question really quick. We all know why we're not going all the way up to 43rd, and it's because we don't want the responsibility of 43rd. How much would the city assume, section-wise, of 43rd if it were built out, if we annexed all the way up to 43rd? Would we have to take over the whole road?
The whole road.
From where to where?
The whole road from where the annexation starts on the east end to the west, yeah.
To K61.
Or wherever that annexation, well, we just went through all that with the county on 43rd and all these streets and the state law that changed it.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times we had roads and we annexed, half is in the city, half is in the county. Well, that statute was changed and we just went through that with the county and we assumed all of those responsibilities on roads on both sides, whether it be city or county. And of course, the county's repaving those as part of that.
So what about that
deal.
piece that in the northeast corner, the upper corner there, that does abut 43rd? What, for drainage purposes?
The city's responsible to go to the city limits.
Okay, so what
wouldn't go all the way to 43rd.
Even though the drainage
Right.
area would be in the city?
Right.
Oh, so even there, it's not going to 43rd? That particular piece?
The shaded area? is that what you're
The
referring to?
cross-hatched area in the upper right corner?
Yeah, that's the drainage. It's going to the drainage ditch.
Right. But that's part of the annexation,
It
right?
would get annexed. We could be forced to annex the other side of the road, but only to the extent of that property.
Okay.
So you'd have this little tiny,
Yeah,
little tiny.
I doubt
piece.
that the
Okay.
county would have any interest in doing that.
Yeah, okay.
But it could go to that, but it would be for that section of land.
Right, and
road.
you've seen the others before, and you'll see some in the upcoming months.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Please do.
I'll be brief. We met with the city and the county early when we first purchased this. And we went in detail because we really thought we'd annex everything up to 43rd. I think that the city just doesn't want to deal with, I'm only guessing here, that they probably don't want to work and take on the expense of 43rd Street.
We don't.
At the same time, then you're going to be dealing with Brigadoons and expanding that in all the way. And I think everybody decided that this would be the best suit for right now, and that's why it's drawn the way it's drawn. It's not like we second guessed. We met with the city and the county and come up with this as our only solution.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Is Brigadoons part of the city?
No.
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, okay. Are they on city services, city sewer?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, so they're their own septic
Yeah,
system?
they're bigger lots out there.
Okay.
Has there ever been any communication with them about annexation? I know that's not part of this conversation, but just in general.
Not that
Again,
I'm-
irregularity again.
Not that I'm aware
You
of.
carve out a little spot there if you.
In speaking with residents who built in the Spyglass Edition early, like like the lot across the street from us. They built, I think they were the first house out there in 1980. They very much wanted to be annexed very much. I don't know how Brigadoon feels, but
I'd kind of like to hear if there are other residents from the area that would like to address the council to at least give that opportunity.
Hi, my name is Radley Brooks, and I live at 3715 Spyglass Drive. And kind of listening to what's being proposed, I agree with Jade in the fact that you kind of need to look at the plan, because if somebody's going to buy this, develop it, no matter how we look at doing it, as Strawn mentioned, his only interest is kind of making it paved to 43rd. You're going to fill this with a bunch of houses. I feel like the people that I know that live off of 43rd complain about the upkeep as well as that dirt road, so I can't assume that even if this was developed and people fill these 120 lots, that they're actually going to take that route to and from their home. So living there on Spyglass, I also have 3 girls that are very active, and they're the only place for them to enjoy in the neighborhood is to go up and down Spyglass. So there's a lot of people that walk and throughout the community too. And so as we mentioned today about the safety of our children, it's a real big concern for me, for my daughters to be out there playing when this traffic would increase. The other thing too is already looking at the quality of Lucille and how much repair that it constantly needs and it goes under, and then also our Spyglass. So I feel like the city already struggles to do a good job of maintaining our street, where we already are paying a lot of taxes as well. So with my, I guess my input on this is that I'm all for development, and kind of what Tom was saying, I feel like doing it the right way matters for the safety standards, and also too for looking at all the possibilities that we can expand with kind of keeping things in mind to what also keeps to our neighborhood and holds our values of our homes. So I've done a lot of the financing on various homes that Jim's built, and again, they've been good quality homes, but I've also just feel like, again, that high density homes going in here would be a major concern of mine without really thorough planning. So that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Separate the zoning from the plating.
Deborah?
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm actually here to speak on item 8A, but I'll just introduce myself. Deborah Tufel with the Hutchinson-Reno County Chamber of Commerce. And I didn't come specifically to even address this issue, but I do feel compelled to make a couple of remarks on behalf of our business community and the members of our chamber. One, in the 2015 Business Conditions Survey, businesses across this community responded about factors that affect their ability to thrive and grow in Hutchinson and Reno County. And a number of them cited factors that they feel like hinder their ability to attract a quality workforce. And 4 of those factors addressed housing. Housing quality, housing affordability, availability of rental or multifamily housing, and just the quality of the community in general, and the appearance that it gives to new residents that our businesses are trying to attract to fill quality jobs in Hutchinson. I know you all have a comprehensive plan, and that comprehensive plan addresses housing and the future growth of housing in the community. And housing development probably is hamstrung as a result of the impact of the economic development situation in Hutchinson that has, quite honestly, eroded over a long period of time. For a number of reasons, sometimes outside of the community's control, businesses make decisions that pull investment out. And so you as city fathers and mothers have the responsibility to decide how you as a community want to grow, and therefore you adopt a comprehensive plan about the future of this community over a long period of time. That document gives business investors the confidence in how they make decisions about how they invest their dollars. And so if that plan says that And past history has been that we have annexation that is fiscally prudent to the city, but helps the city grow the tax base of the community, growing in a responsible way, not doing island annexation, not getting out ahead of oneself, but in growing in a way that makes sense to continue to grow the tax base of the city, which is what keeps you in business. The businesses making the decisions of how to invest their dollars need the confidence that when they invest those dollars, that there's going to be a return on their investment. And we can't send a message to the business community that says we're going to change the rules. When a private business owner like Strawn Development purchases a piece of land for future development because it is part of the city's plan to continue to grow in that direction, and the rules change, he's now hamstrung with a piece of property that he can't further develop. I don't think that this annexation plan is asking at this point what the city's contribution to that is, but past history has been when housing developers develop in this community, the infrastructure is paid for by the developer or through the special assessments that the developer takes the risk on. And so I think that Strawn Development is taking a risk investing in this property with the belief that this was in the future annexation plan of the city. And so I would hope that you would listen to the message that that would send to future developers that may look at Hutchinson if we change the rules midstream. So that's all
Deborah,
I
I think
have.
that's a really good point, and I have 11 or 12 letters from residents that I think all make valid points, and there's a lot of concerns, but that is a concern of mine, that this land was purchased with the idea that it would be able to be developed, and now we're leaving somebody with what could be somewhat worthless land if we don't annex. So it's a really tough decision.
Kind of a final call for anyone else from the audience that'd like to speak to this issue.
Phil Nightingale, 4200 Spyglass Drive. I've lived in Hutchinson since '93. Lived in Spyglass since '04. And I can't really, everything that Tom had to say is my concerns too. I know you've got those letters from all the other residents and stuff also. I want the Hutchinson community to grow also. But let's do it right. I think the traffic needs to go down 43rd. If you don't want that responsibility, I'm sorry, but I think that's where the traffic does need to go to protect all the residents in our area with the way the streets are, the way the roads are and stuff. So let's please just do it right. If it's to take on 43rd to make this work, then let's make it work. Let's do it correctly. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A question while we're switching out. To go back to that, if the annexation was to be out to 43rd, does that mean we would have to bring that road up to a standard? I know we have other dirt roads currently, so many miles of dirt roads in the community already. Would we have to bring it up to that standard immediately?
No.
Okay. I might also ask, would we inherit a bridge if we
No. No.
if we got into that?
I don't, that's too much further west.
Further west, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
we
depends
would
on how much of
only-
43rd you take on.
But looking what he's proposing, those 4 lots to the north, if we went all the way out to 43rd, is that the only strip we would inherit? And then would the county have the strip west?
If you actually, you've got the copy of the statute. If you look at 12.520, and if you look at subsection E, that's where our responsibility comes with the county. And basically, they're just boundary roads, and if we own the property on one side of the road, and normally we're out to the center of the road with that boundary, they can send us notice under that portion of the statute, and we're required to annex the remainder of the roadway into the city.
Which subsection again is that, Paul?
It's 12.520.
Right.
And it's subsection E.
E.
And it's very confusing language, and it has been litigated in other areas.
GF.
Well, and Strawn has no problem with us annexing all the way to 43rd. Right?
No.
Right? Yeah.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
You don't have any problem with us annexing all the way to 43rd?
Doesn't really matter to me. I mean, we've been down that road. The county wants it to happen, the city really didn't. I don't really care.
Okay.
My name is Alex Carvalho, and I live in 3607 Spyglass Drive. Going back to the comment that Council Member Davinsky mentioned, I think that's one of the questions that I think we need to understand really well, which is whether we're going to own that bridge or not. And I don't know if, in going back to the comment that Deborah mentioned with regards to the return on investments, yes, it's very important to focus on the return of investments, and that's what is part of the development of the town. So I think in this particular case, it is important to consider what is going to be the return on investment of the whole project. I'm very much pro-development. I'm very much pro-new housing and those points. But at the same time, I think it would be important that the city would consider what is going to be the impact on the budget. So if we're talking about this and going forward to develop the entire area, we should look forward to the future and consider, are those 120 units going to happen? If it's not the case, what is going to be the impact on the budget in terms of annexing that or including that, the maintenance of that bridge, in terms of developing or making some improvement to Lucille, which is the other access road to the entire neighborhood. And we have the middle school behind Spyglass as well, so we should consider that in the whole project. As many people mentioned before, I think it's very, I would consider that it's yes, of high importance to make sure that we invest in a project that is going to be done right. So that's all I have to say from that perspective. But I think we want to make sure we do it right and we're not spending more money than what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. I hate to keep coming up here, but the annexation, when you ask me, it really doesn't matter to me that much. But I think that there's a lot of people that live up in that area probably don't want to be annexed. What I really don't want to do is I don't want to. It's when we're trying to develop something, we create battles, and we don't like that. It's just apparently it's part of what we do. We don't mean to disrupt people, but when people are seeing things build around them that they're not used to, it does have an impact in their life, and they're worried about probably their largest asset, and that is their home and their neighborhood and their family. We're not here to create problems. We're here to try and find solutions for the community. Briefly, on the back area that I think everybody's more concerned about than this area we're talking about right here is the back where we're using a lower density of homes, which are simply a 70-foot wide lot, which is not that low of density for homes in today's business. But our goal back there right now is more for retired second homes. People that have places in Phoenix that want to be close to Prairie Dunes. They just don't want to have a 3,000 to 6,000 square foot house when all their kids are gone. And so even though we may have rooftops in there, we may not have traffic. And the traffic we have is probably going to be slow traffic, because it may be more as people age.
The geriatric drivers aren't gonna.
And I don't want to. So, at the end of the day, I'm sure not trying to disturb people's property. I'm trying to build a concept for our community, for people to retire and possibly move to Hutchinson, other than a retirement home. A nice community that they could live in with sidewalks on both sides of the street, because that's what the developer wants in this particular subdivision in that area. So that being said, I'm not trying to stir up anything, but the annexation, when you go, I don't want to get in another battle with a whole nother neighborhood, because everybody now wants to annex it and they're mad.
I see what you're saying.
So I'd like to be able to annex mine, and then if y'all want to annex more later, that's
our business. Huh?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Jim, phase one, 8 homes for what you just.
Yeah, and this, yes, ma'am. And the 70-foot design, that if we're wrong on what we're looking at on the single-family patio homes, if we're wrong on that market, we could double those lots and sell them at 140-foot wide lots. That's kind of our theory.
If you'd planned larger lots in that area, I don't think we'd be having this discussion.
Correct. Yeah. But let me tell you, there's a lot
We would have annexed
of...
you and gone
But the
from there.
market we're looking for are older people, have a lot of money, they don't want a yard.
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, I'm not sure as an older person myself, I kind of would view the idea of living a little closer to town as a little bit more practical, simply because of the fact that we're slower drivers and all that good stuff. But, you have to assess that market.
We think the golf course is a draw. We think
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that live there, maybe getting a little older, enjoy golfing, they just want somewhere close.
Have we passed the law that you can drive your golf cart on the street?
Anything else?
Isn't it?
Okay.
No.
Actually,
I
I
thought
did
I
have
saw
one other
something to,
question.
not us personally,
Oh,
but state.
Not us, no.
Let's talk about Phase 2, which is the majority of the letters I got, that's the largest concern.
Yeah.
And that's because we all know Lucille's a train wreck, and it's not our train wreck. City doesn't own all of it, so we can't fix it. That's part of the problem. When would you even do Phase 2? That would be a whole nother, we'd have to go through process for Phase 1 plating before we'd even touch that.
They actually had when we bought this land, they actually had all the street design done. They were ready to annex it at that time. And it went off at an auction, and I was out of town and wound up buying it. But I didn't like the original layout. And so I'm making a move of street around a little bit. And so that would be Phase 2. And so I could see that being another year away, but it is a total different market concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Different group of people.
So this market, Jim, in terms of Phase 2, 130 lots.
Phasing, we'll probably put 20 in.
Yeah,
I
that was my
don't
question
remember
is,
what the
initially
count is, but I think
about what?
I think we've designed it in like 4 or 5 phases, just because of we'll just open it up and kind of see what the market bears, and then as we continue to build. But we think that there is a market there. Senior living.
Senior living.
So the 120 homes would be senior living as well.
Sorry, I'm getting hard of hearing.
The second phase would be targeted for senior living as
Yes.
well? Okay.
I'm not saying all, but there may be young professionals. I'm just saying the concept is people that are travel, gone. It may be somebody that this would be a second home for them because they want to come here and play on Prairie Dunes Golf Course.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Okay. Any further questions or comments?
Maybe one additional one. With regards, it was mentioned earlier that the comprehensive land use map, the reason it's shaded as high-density residential, where did that input come from? I'm sorry, Jana, ask you to come over.
That was Jim.
I know a lot of thought went into the comprehensive plan, so I know there was a lot of input. Where
We
did
looked
that?
at all the areas around in our area of influence, and we knew that Jim Strawn had this proposal. We were trying to be responsive to that.
Okay.
And I apologize if it came across, if my language came across as, well, this is what Jim wants. Really, if we know somebody wants to develop something, we try to be responsive to that and not have to go through amendments. But in this case, we're going to have to amend it anyway, so. But yeah, we looked at all of them. We don't really try to determine what the market is, of course, but we knew he was interested in developing the property.
And this area has been planned for development years ago. I don't remember who the original owner was, so Cherry Hills has had, it just didn't work out for that particular developer. So it's not like this has never been thought about as new residential development for the city. Going back years.
Well, John, I appreciate your comments earlier, and quite frankly, I tend to agree with the point that you're making, at least in regards to what we're looking at today. I have some concerns that has been raised by the residents as to access to the area to the west, and we'll have some difficulties with that, and I'll just share that with you, I guess, Jim. But because I think that's a valid concern in terms of traffic on the existing streets. unless they are all slower moving and less cars and that kind of thing. But with what we're dealing with today, I'm supportive of that. I think that it does make some sense. I think it probably fits the neighborhood. Jen, I asked the question about, I'd sure like to see some sidewalks go in up there in the existing area. Now, there may not be a way to do that, but I think that would address some of the issues of whatever level of density and whatnot. Now, that's just me. But I think that would help with some of the concerns as well. I think that the point made, John, is a natural progression is correct. But I do think we have some other issues beyond the 8 lots that we're looking at today and that area for annexation. And I think we may need to look at going to 43rd Street, possibly, especially when we talk about that area to the west down the road in time. And I just want to double check, John, the utilities that go in here will all be covered by the developer and bonding and whatever. I mean, that the residents, as far as special assessments, et cetera, there would be no cost to that as far as installation. It would be the maintenance ongoing years ahead.
We do in our special assessment policies, you know, we share half the cost of the water, and then the balance of that is paid by the developer, and then there's percentage of intersections that the city takes care of, but typically
But then
that's...
the developer assesses the residents.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Sanders would be affected, and then
Yes.
the new residents. Okay.
And the other comment that I made a note that I wanted to speak to, and I realize that we are, and there he is, Tom, you mentioned it, that we are undergoing some challenges at this point in time. At the same point, or at the same time, I think that we have many good things going on in this community, and it's certainly not that the sky is falling. So, and I'm not going to try to list a number of things, but I think we have many good things going on as well, and the challenges we have are opportunities for us to rise to the occasion and deal with them. So, enough said on that. Anything further before a motion?
Another one, just to make sure I'm tracking right, but with regards to the annexation piece, and that's really, again, what we're here for, not, the plating will have its own process.
Just the
and all that. Is there any cost associated to the city for the annexation piece? Just annexing the, it's filing the papers or whatever it is, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then, even though we have these plans in front of us, these still have to be vetted. These still have to go through every one of those processes that we talked about.
Yep.
That we go forward.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
Well, I would move to approve the petition and consent for annexation of the identified land owned by Strawn Development, Inc., and the petition for exemption which excludes the identified land from Reno County Fire District Number 2, and adopt and approve the ordinance including and incorporating the identified land within the limits and boundaries of the city of Hutchinson, Kansas, and authorize the mayor to sign.
Is there a second?
I'm going to second it with the comment that because I feel that there are appropriate controls in place through the rezoning process and the plating process, I think that this will be revisited with the opportunity for all resident input, for the public hearing, et cetera. So I'm going to second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Linda, call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes?
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
I know I didn't speak to conversation, but I want to piggyback on what Jade said a little bit. I'm really relying on the process for this. I don't think the annexation necessarily is going to increase our liability or anything like that, but I'm really eyeing the process, the plating process, and I want input from those individuals affected to participate in that process as well, so that we can make sure that this does go, all parties benefit. So with that being said, then I do say yes.
Deckard?
And ditto Jade and Dave's comments, and I vote yes. Let's take a 10-minute, John.
We have, if we could do this to the next item, because we've got some individuals that I
Before
think
we
at a
break?
time,
Yeah.
if we
Okay.
could, Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8A you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate you being here.
They don't appreciate us.
Linda, you want to call the next item?
Item 8A, consider development agreement with Kansas Protein Foods.
Let the room clear a little bit. Mayor, Council, you heard last week the announcement of the reopening of the former CHS food facility by Kansas Protein Foods LLC, which was great news in light of everything else that was going on. I think it kind of got overblown by some of the other news we were talking about last week. But Kansas Protein Foods is a newly formed subsidiary of Kansas Ethanol LLC, which is the company out of the Sterling, Rice County area. The plant, upon reopening, is expected to reach an employment level of at least 40 individuals over the course of the next 4 years. And I think when the plant closed, they announced there were roughly 60 employees involved. And so during the course of the last couple of months, the city, county officials, along with chamber officials, have sat down and talked about this project. As an incentive package to help make this project possible, the city was asked, and we've are recommending that we participate in the funding of a financial incentive policy where the city would contribute a total of $200,000 over the course of the next 4 years, with $100,000 being upfront July 1, and then the additional $25,000 annual payments on October of each of the next 4 years. And again, this is really a cash grant, if you will, not a loan or anything like that. And as part of the development agreement that you have in front of you, the agreement does require that the company maintain a annual payroll level of $700,000 during the course of this time. And if that doesn't happen, then the grant amount would be proportionally reduced. From a fiscal standpoint, our contribution, our $200,000 over the course of the next 4 years, would be paid out of our newly created Economic Opportunity Fund. And the council recall that we started that in 2017 with an initial $150,000 investor transfer, and then that'll be followed in 2018 with another $150 transfer. So we'll roughly at the end of this year have a $300,000 balance there. As part of this package, Reno County has agreed under their payment for jobs, agreed to provide an additional $43,000 plus potential bonuses, which could come up to $51,000, just over $51,000 that they would contribute to this project as well. And as part of this project in your package, we did provide you with an economic impact study that was run on this project, and that was completed by Wichita State University through the Center for Economic Development. And really what it does, it's intended to show that a project with our incentives involved, what impact it has on the community. And happy to report that the study does show that the city and county both would impact significantly by this reopening of this company with our incentive package included. So I would like to just stand for any questions, but do want to introduce, I believe one of the gentlemen had to leave, Mike Chisholm, who's the CEO of Kansas Ethanol that was here earlier, had to leave, but I think Dave Kerr, who is an investor and on the board at Kansas Ethanol, is here to represent the company should you have any questions of them. So with that, we'll stand for questions and certainly recommend approval of the development agreement before you, and very excited that the Kansas Ethanol Group stepped up and took a bit of bad news that we got last December and turned it into some good news here in April. So with that, any questions?
Yes. I was very disappointed that this news didn't get more traction in the media, understandably so because of some other news, but boy, is this a great deal for Hutchinson, taking those good jobs with benefits. A group of local investors cared enough about this community. And I mean, it's such positive news.
Yep.
Thrilled.
Well, this is, knowing it was on the agenda, one of the things I had in mind when I made my comments about we have many good things happening in this community as well. So,
I wonder if we could hear from Mr. Kerr just a moment.
Dave's used to the microphone.
Yes.
I think, so.
And Dave, do you, and I would imagine Deborah as well.
And Deborah, yeah, Deborah Tuffel's here too, you
Yeah.
heard. Yeah.
Thank you
Abby.
for your patience.
Sure. Fascinating discussion that you had. You're getting the second team here. Mike Chisholm, who is the CEO of Kansas Ethanol, did have to leave a little while ago, so I am the chairman of the board and pleased to have the opportunity to address you very briefly. We have closed on this deal. We closed last week, so we now own the plant and I think 21 acres included, and are proceeding immediately to do the extensive cleaning that will be required. Fortunately, all of the equipment is there to restart operations, but because this is a food quality plant, we have to do an extensive amount of cleaning and preparation. We're in the process of hiring the staff needed to start, which will be in the 18 to 20 person level. We have about half of those in place, but most importantly, we have the leadership who were operating the plant at the time, the plant manager, IT person, and others that are key to making the plant able to get back into operation. The essential factor is that, of course, because the plant closed in December 1, some customers have had to find other sources. They did have some inventory and things, but they've had to find other sources, and those could be a little time-consuming to get some of them back. Although we're assured that many will come back over time, we have some work to do in that arena. That's why we're starting out smaller, and we'll add persons as the demand allows. So I think you've seen from Kansas Ethanol's past history that it is an excellent employer. We don't have much turnover at all at Kansas Ethanol, and I think people who work there have found it to be a very good place to work, including full benefits at a very high quality benefits, and that we will expect to have the same kind of record at Kansas Protein Foods. With that, unless you have questions, I'll...
Dave, I would just say this. You know, we talk a lot about entrepreneurial spirit in various terms, and this is just absolutely a classic example of entrepreneurship at work. I've followed the Kansas Ethanol Project from its inception 10 to 12 years ago when we began those conversations to what is evolved in today to the next phase of your group of identifying. This is a business opportunity for you that I know you will continue to want to grow it and expand it, and all to the benefit of our region in south central Kansas. So thank you very much for your stepping up and making this happen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and we appreciate if you go ahead and put these incentives in place. Incentives are very useful in taking at least a little bit of the risk of a step like this out. So we appreciate that assistance, and we appreciate the Chamber's willingness to work with us throughout. Very, very competent and able to address all of our questions about what the intentions of the community would be.
Dave, a question. First of all, I second John's comments, definitely. But the $700,000 payroll being maintained as part of the agreement, roughly how many jobs positions does that equate to?
About the level that we will be starting at.
Okay, the 18 to 20 that you mentioned.
Yeah,
okay.
something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so as you grow, that'll obviously just get...
Obviously, it will increase.
Wonderful.
Provided we're able to grow,
There it is.
It'll be a slam dunk.
There it is, exactly.
We have to get
It's
those
gonna take
customers
time.
back.
Oh, sure. Well, I know when we were in discussions as this was building and what level of commitment the city wanted to participate in. We knew the county was going to participate at a certain level, but I think I would never say an easy decision, because there are no easy decisions, but it was, as far as those go, an easy decision to put what we could as a city behind. We recognize the value and the need of good jobs. We hear it every day, and this is an example of the city's commitment to entrepreneurs and others to help get some of those good jobs to Hutchinson. So,
well, while our ultimate goal, of course, is to make a profitable company here, certainly not lost on us that the community can benefit from the reopening of a plant that had been here for something like 40 years.
Right.
The community needed a little good news.
Amen.
That wouldn't have driven our decision by itself, but it was not lost on us.
Good. Super. Anything else of Dave? Deborah, you want to speak?
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me take the microphone twice this morning. I just want to say a few words in support of this project on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, as well as Greater Hutch, which is our economic development arm of the Chamber. We did sit down immediately after learning of the news, as all of you did. We're taken aback by the closure of CHS Foods, quite honestly, on December 1st. But anytime you're handed a challenge like that, the first thing you do to go to work is to find opportunities to backfill it. And I would say we had a short list of ideas, but it was very promising when a Kansas company came forth with an idea that could repurpose this facility. And I think really time was of the essence. With a food processing facility, it does have certain food grade standards. You don't want to let a building or a facility sit idle. So it was important and imperative that we all come together quickly, which city staff, as well as the company and community supporters, Reno County, all came to the table quickly to try to find solutions. And I would say we explored all options before looking to this Economic Opportunity Fund as the option for an incentive. But one of the measuring sticks, just for citizens who might be listening to this and saying, how do we measure the quality of one job versus another job? John alluded to this in his presentation, that we invested in this third-party economic impact analysis that Wichita State computed that looked at the impact of the total of the 51 jobs over the life of the project, as well as the investment, and then measure that against that incentive. And so, as John said, there was a more than 2-to-1 return for every dollar of incentive that you all are considering that will return to this community, therefore making a very positive statement. And so we appreciate that you all have allocated dollars from that opportunity fund. I think it's important that as we have opportunities present us, I think this is going to be a year, I've said this a lot, that this is going to be the year that we turn things in a positive direction. So I hope this won't be the first time and last time that I come to you with in support of a project that seeks some support from that opportunity fund. And I just thank you for offering that as a way that we can help secure more business and jobs in Hutchinson and Reno County.
Thank you.
I hope it's not only the first time either.
Yeah,
That would be
right.
good.
We want lots.
Is there a motion or any further discussion?
I move to approve the development agreement with Kansas Protein Foods LLC and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Anything further? Linda, take roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Iris DeCarvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
yes.
Deckent?
Yes. Before we move on, I guess I'll just say it the way I'm thinking it. I'm disappointed in this particular, on this particular item, that the benefit to the county equals or exceeds the benefit to the city per the study that Deborah referred to, and yet the participation by the county is at 25% of the participation by the city. I think we stepped forward and recognizing what this does for the city, and not just the city, but for the county and other taxing entities, because all taxing entities benefit. And I just want to publicly state my disappointment in that level of participation. I'm hoping that as we have other opportunities, that we can be competitive in those opportunities and may definitely need the partnership assistance by the county to make those become real.
Steve, as I read that impact study, those were my exact thoughts. And I just go back to the strategic planning session that this council did, and our number one concern is positive job growth in Hutchinson. And maybe the county has different priorities, but I think that this shows, as Dave mentioned, where our priorities lie, and I'm proud of our stepping up.
Okay, Linda, next item. Wait a minute here. We've got a few minutes to go in this meeting, I think.
Promise me a break.
I didn't promise you one, but we'll take one anyway, won't we? 8 to 10 minutes.
8 to 10 minutes.
8 to 10 minutes. We can start at 8 and go back. An extended break, so we will reconvene. And next item, please.
Item 8B, consider special event request by United Way to close Main Street for the 2018 Over the Edge event.
Good morning, Council. Jim Seitnader, Downtown Development. The special event request by United Way, as Linda said, is to close Main Street at the mid-block on Main to Sherman Street in front of the First National Bank, as we did last year on Friday, June 1st and Saturday, June 2nd for the Over the Edge event, which is a great event and needs a giant building to make it successful. And so the First National Bank is a great place. A little background, early this January, the United Way submitted their request to close Main Street to through traffic, just like they did last year. Last year's event was a Thursday and Friday event, though. So as we met and listened to their plans, and we thought of our discussion back during the special event study sessions and things about the impact of closing Main Street, and some comments that were made about the amount of days that, we close Main Street. So we thought it was important to follow through with the policy. We met again early in March to try to talk about some alternative solutions, some ideas that we had, myself and HPD, Chief Hutchinson, and they listened and we talked it over, went back, they went back and decided and discussed and decided it was in their best interest to go ahead and make the request to close Main Street on Friday and Saturday, June 1 and 2. And so the plan would be, find my mouse there,
I knew we should have had an assistant there.
Yeah, we should have had an assistant.
I think so. I think it might have went. Yeah. Did you go off to your right?
Well, I actually hit the click.
Yeah. Well, let me see.
Oh, she's bringing it back up.
Yeah, we can just move to the right, get off that screen up there.
Good thing I'm not running it. We'd really be in trouble.
Yeah, me too.
Just gotta move it. Yeah,
Gotcha.
there you are.
All right. So basically, we use the dimensions of the bank building. Where'd it go? The corner of the bank to the north, which abuts to the sleep shop, and then to the intersection there at Sherman and Main. And that makes a nice area, leaves the area to the north open because there are major retailers at the sleep shop and the et cetera shop. There's a restaurant, jewelry stores, so there's a lot of activity in that area. So it worked well last year to block basically a third of the block. Traffic can still back up and turn around and go in, and we put a stop through traffic up at the intersection there at First and Main to divert traffic that wants to go straight up and down Main Street to either use the east or west to accomplish that. So basically this morning, United Way is here represented by Lisa Gleason and Stephen Peterman. I think they'd like to speak and talk on their behalf, but the plan would be to consider the area, as we said, between the bank to the north and the sleep shop boundary, and then to the south, the intersection boundary. The other alternate idea proposed was to use Sherman Street over by Bluebird Books, that half block, as the alternative space. So I'll ask Stephen or Lisa to come up and explain.
Good morning. Lisa Gleason, Executive Director for United Way of Reno County. And this is our second and our last time to do Over the Edge. So if you've ever wanted to rappel off a building, this is your only time now to be able to do that. We did it last year, and it was such a fun event. And we were so grateful to the city of Hutchinson for supporting us and being able to help encourage philanthropy in our community. You know, it's kind of a critical time for us as a charity here in our community. We have lost substantial, as we're talking about CHS. They were amazing supporters of United Way and Eaton and Target and all of those. So it's a real critical time for us to be able to continue to raise dollars to support Reno County and all the social and economic issues that are caused by some of those things are really the agencies that we are supporting and trying to help benefit. The Over the Edge event is a great way to bring our community together. We're having a party down on Main Street. We want to have some fun. We want to really shine that spotlight on Maine. And of course, the beautiful First National Bank building that has graciously, they are our sponsors, our building sponsors for this event. Last year, we were able to block off that portion of the street. We don't block off the whole piece, but we had, all of our edgers had cheerleaders and family and friends who came and were down there with their posters and their balloons and cheering their fellow loved one over the edge and down the building. We had Mennonite Friendship Communities had one of their employees going over, and so they brought a van load of residents from Mennonite Friendship and got chairs set up in the street. And so all the elderly residents were cheering him on as he went down. So it enabled us to make it a really fun thing. This year we'd like to put up a few tents. We'd like our agencies to be there so that the public can really connect with what our agencies do and learn a little bit about that. We'd also like it just to be fun, like to do some fun things for kids, make it an event where people want to come to, even if they're not rappelling, they're coming down to enjoy downtown and just be entertained by those who are choosing to go over the edge. So we need it for our charitable works here in town. We need to do this event to make it successful. We really would like it to be expanded or to be able to do what we did last year. We have music going on. Certainly the downtown businesses benefited. I know half the people who went over the edge either hung out at Bluebird or at Carl's afterwards, and so I know that they definitely benefited. And I know one of the questions that was brought up to us, or one of the comments was, if we block off a little portion of Main Street, people can't get to the rest of Main Street, the businesses that are down there. So, and this is certainly not a scientific poll at all, but I just start, so in all fairness, I wanted to ask that question. We don't want to hurt businesses. We love our businesses. That's what supports United Way. So I just started asking people, would this really hamper you from wanting to go to another business on the other side of Main Street? And so I just know that I feel better once I ask that question to people, that everybody kept saying, absolutely not. It's Hutchinson. We can go around the block. It's not like, we're in a really big city where traffic's just terrible. And so it made me feel better because I wanted to do that due diligence to make sure we weren't going to hamper someone else or another business. So I really feel like it wouldn't, and I feel like it's going to drive people downtown, and I would hope that it will help encourage people to shop while they're down there watching and being entertained. But it is a really critical time for us. The last thing I'd really like to talk about is just the safety factor. We want it to be safe. We want it to be fun. The people who are coming to hold our event are of the utmost quality, and safety is obviously their most important concern. So we have to block off a portion anyway. And for people to be wandering across the street to come watch their loved one, I just keep thinking about all the foot traffic that will be there, and if we're blocked off, that gives them a safe place to be, so that they aren't having to worry about the traffic light. And I keep thinking about people who might be driving down the street. If they're driving down the street and wanting to watch someone, that might not be a good thing. So being able to block that portion off, I think, also helps with the safety for our event, and again, helps it to be fun and keeps the focus on giving back to the community and doing it in a fun and kind of exciting way. So we just ask for your consideration to let us be able to block off that street and make it the party downtown that we'd like it to be, all for a good cause. And we'd like you to consider going over the edge if you haven't already, thanks to our mayor who has said yes. So thank you, Mayor. Stephen, do you have anything on that?
Not a whole lot. Stephen Peterman, as Lisa said, the safety's the big thing to me. I know from last year, running from up on top of the bank, down and across the street to communicate, to take things, I think that would be a concern of mine. I think a distraction, if someone's driving down Main Street, and we had last year, we had Batman, Catwoman, Spider-Man going down the building, I think that couldn't help but be a distraction that could put people at risk. So I think that. The other thing I would say is, United Way raises $1.3 million for the community. Last year, this event raised $70,000 plus. This year, we anticipate it being hopefully twice that amount. So I think it's a wonderful cause. I'll say this about Lisa. She would do anything and everything for the community, never to inhibit it. So I think just her confidence in this, I think, speaks a lot for doing this, blocking off downtown Main Street there. And it's half a block. I said three detour signs that people can get anywhere they want to go south of us. So appreciate your consideration.
One quick question, Lisa, or Jim, I'm not sure who to actually ask this to. You actually will be able to travel on Sherman, or
Yes.
we're going to block it off just to Sherman,
Just to Sherman.
north? Okay, got it.
We don't block the intersection.
Okay, got it.
Lisa, I'm curious, you indicated that you had spoke with one or more business owners in the area. Did that happen to include Chris Barnes, who was mentioned in Jim's?
It did not. I
I'm
did
sorry.
speak with Chris Barnes, though, yes, and he did express concern about blocking Main Street. And we tried to work with the Over the Edge. We looked at going over the south side of the building. They said that would have taken another trip, another site inspection, would have cost thousands of dollars for them to do that. It also would not be as a favorable location to go over the edge. So.
Okay.
I also spoke with Chris about it, and he certainly believes in the United Way, thinks it's a great event. It's not anything against the United Way. It's just the amount of times that Main Street is blocked. This year, we do have some good things. I think this being the last year of the event is an important thing to consider, because we do want it to go off well. We want it to accomplish everything that United Way needs to do, and because it does help our community. The bike criterium, which was another event that we blocked Main Street off for, is not happening this year either. So that's already eliminated, 1 or 2 days of the concern. And Chris is a true supporter of the community. It's just that we are cognizant of the amount of days that we asked to do that. That's why we thought it was important, since it was part of the discussion that we discussed it this morning. But he certainly believes in United Way, and so I don't think he would have an issue passing it with the idea that this is the last year that it's going to happen, and we are doing at least one less day on Main Street. And the city's been so great about creating these great spaces, festival type spaces, and I think we'll see this summer how the Hutch Rec is going to utilize the different areas of downtown through Third Thursday activities and events. And we have 2 really great events that'll happen on Walnut Street, one in May, the Cinco de Mayo event, and then Electrics does a great community fun day in June. So that's where we like to see those kinds of activities happen. But there's not a 8-story building there to repel off over there. So my thought and my recommendation would be that we pass that with the idea that this is the last year, and I think the points of safety and all that are very valid. So it's a good thing and something, but we thought only right that we brought it up, since it was discussed during the special events discussions.
Thank you, Jim.
The last thing I would add is not only is the $150,000 we hope to raise critical to the United Way, one of the things we've talked about internally strategically is we need visibility, and getting our agencies out in the public, getting United Way out in the public is just another way to highlight that and encourage future support of the United Way here in Hutchinson and Reno County. So.
Do you have an alternative date if the weather doesn't cooperate?
Generally, what we do is they will stick around another day, and if that doesn't work, then we offer to repellers the opportunity to go to another location. So the next place, if Over the Edge is doing something in Wichita, which they've done in the past, then the repeller would be offered the opportunity of that. But usually it's just that following day. So it would be Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday would be the last chance to do that. So that's a good point, and I guess we ought to consider that too.
So just pray.
Okay.
Nancy, just pray, and we'll be good.
What kind of weather, I mean, would rain derail it?
Rain is not, lightning is the big
Lightning
thing.
would be big.
lightning would do it.
Real heavy wind, but it has to be really significant. There's-
Like today's going to be.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yes.
today would
Yeah.
stop it even, so,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
lightning's the big
Lightning's the
thing.
big one. That makes the
Lightning
most
within a
sense.
certain, distance of the building, so.
Okay, are we ready? All right, I will move to approve the United Way special event request to block off the unit block of Main Street to through traffic from mid-block south to Sherman on Friday, June 1, 2018, and Saturday, June 2 on 2018 from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for the Over the Edge event.
And I will second, but I'll add also, and Jim and others that might be listening, that we have heard, about blocking Main Street, and we appreciate you doing due diligence and all that. And I think we all agree we'll be very mindful of what events going forward so that they don't get out of hand. I think this one has a smaller impact with just a small, tiny area and all that, but, and I'm very much in favor of it myself.
As long as you can still get through Sherman.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that, I do second.
Any other comments? Linda, call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes?
Pyrus de Carvalho? Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Decker?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8C, consider 2018 residential street maintenance bid award.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Bruce Colley, Director of Engineering. I had a couple of slides that were going to be up here, and I have, in the sake of time, I think what I'll do is I'll just show you this first slide. This is for the 2018 residential street maintenance project, which is chip seal. And what I've done is I've provided a map here that shows 2016, 2017, and then 2018. 2016 being in the green, so you can see in the green areas. That was all 2016. We popped over here. 2017 would be what I would call a magenta on my drawing, but it looks more like a pink, if you will, and then comes up into the infamous spyglass area and down, and then of course down here into Cary Park as well. That was 2017. Then this year planned is in the blue. This edge here, this street here, this line is Plum Street. Then it runs, that's 30th Street right here. Then it runs all the way over to Hendricks. And if you come down, we hit 17th Street, or 17th Avenue, I'm sorry. There, we're going to run from Hendricks over to Van Buren. Then I'm going to come down Hendricks again to 11th Avenue. And then we're going to go 11th Avenue over to Van Buren. And you'll notice that we try to go ahead and isolate in various areas throughout the city. This follows our pavement maintenance program. And if you'd like to see, we don't have 19 and 20 yet shown on an exhibit, but the next slide actually shows the years of 21 through 28. So our intent is to cover the entire city with chip seal and then mill and resurface every 7 years. So that kind of gives you a progression as to where we're headed. So I wanted to give you a big picture. I mean, it's easy for me to come up here and just read a document to you about Circle C Paving and their 2018 chip seal program, but I think a picture does say 1,000 words. So with that, I'll move into the agenda item. On March the 18th, 2018, bids were open for the 2018 residential street maintenance project, and a total of 2 bids were received. The engineer's estimate was $774,000. APAC Kansas Inc. was $781,981.98. Circle C Paving and Construction Limited Liability Corporation, LLC, was bid in the amount of $767,965.46. And as such, Circle C Paving was the low bidder. We reviewed the bids. They've done the chip seal projects here in the city of Hutchinson in the last 2 years, so they're a good reputable company. We've had good luck with them. And from a fiscal standpoint, the cost of this project, we did cut $200,000 out of the residential street maintenance program last year, and $681,000 of this project will be through that residential street CIP, and then there's $86,965.46 out of the arterial reserve, which will go ahead and make up the difference. So we are funded, and it's our recommendation that City Council approve the bids and authorize the mayor to sign the contract with Circle C Paving and Construction LLC in the amount of $767,965.46.
Tell me about Circle C. Something in the back of my mind tells me there were some issues with them last year. Is that correct?
There were issues.
And
not
did they get
last year,
resolved
that
or
was
what?
Actually in 2016.
Was it 16? All right. Okay.
Yes, sir. And I don't know if I can go back a slide or not. Let me try that. How about that? Yes, when the issues with them, we had a double chip seal area. It was actually, let me see if I can come.
Yeah.
Right in through there, and then came right on over around the curve. And we had some areas in here as well. And what that was we had a double chip, and they applied the second coat too quickly.
Yeah, it was something to do with
And
the
so
oil.
now our specifications have been revised, that they must wait 24 hours minimum
Okay.
before they can apply that second coat. And it was tacky and sticky.
Yeah.
The end result was fine, but it did create some issues.
Picking up of
and-
tar, I would take it then, is that or did it, the tacky stickiness, was it a matter of what it did to vehicles driving over it then?
Yes.
Or was it?
Yes,
Okay,
and as a matter of
Didn't
fact.
damage or alter the quality of the road surface,
No,
but.
sir. No, sir.
Okay. Yeah.
No, and what we did at that point in time is the contractor set up an account with a local vendor to go ahead and clean all the cars, so people called in. They went and it was taken care of.
Yeah, remember that.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to point out, and Bruce, you got to help me on this, but this bid, I haven't did the math, but is it within 3% of the other bid, the local bid? You remember? Anyway.
Oh.
You know, we had a conversation about our local preference policy that allows a Reno County domiciled business that would have the opportunity to come back and match the higher bid if they were within 3% over a 10,000 project. I didn't do the math. I thought we agreed that it was, but the policy says that we may. And we've talked about that internally, and we're talking about road projects like this, and you've got only 2 bidders. We think that's a dangerous path to.
Do you want to scare off other people from
Because
bidding?
otherwise you would lose
You'll never get
any
another
outside
bid.
competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just wanted people to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
And
Thank
we
you,
we
Mr.
chose
Rudolph.
not to recommend the local preference policy, because I think I did the math and they were within that.
Yes, sir, they
3%,
are,
yeah.
or they were.
Well, aren't they going to be continuing Main Street?
Who?
APAC. Don't we go further south?
Not, you know,
Not on this, but aren't they going to be involved this spring and summer?
well, as soon as we bid it, we're bidding
Yeah.
that April.
The bids are due
Okay,
April
I
the
thought,
10th.
okay, I
on
thought
Main
we'd
Street.
already bid
Right.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
No, you're right, yeah.
With my short stint on the council, the one thing I've found guaranteed is there will be road work
Yeah.
in perpetuity.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but it's just such a drain. I didn't realize what an economic expense it was until you start seeing the hard numbers.
Yeah.
Necessary, mind you, but it's just a continual, from the moment it's put in, it's degrading. And
Yes.
anyways,
You're right.
Kind of like a car.
you're not wrong.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I will move to approve awarding the bid to Circle C Paving and Construction LLC in the amount of $767,965.46, subject to compliance with all legal requirements, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Anything further? Linda, call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes?
Iris de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes. Next item.
Item 8D, discussion of council meeting times.
I don't know that, John provided us a memo and made some comments, provided us some information. But this was something that last meeting I raised, asked for us to consider. We began some discussion 2 weeks ago. I'd like to continue that and come to a decision one way or another, either to make some change or not to make some change. John has as an alternative to changing our meeting dates. I think he talked about possibly looking at our budget meetings and maybe other study sessions being an evening event. That would provide an opportunity. And I'm not weighing in on that at this point at least, one way or the other. John, you'd asked me towards the end of our discussion last time, and I've given it some more thought, and I'm still about the same place. I'd suggest that we look at a 5:30 meeting time once a month, either on a Monday or a Tuesday. And I add the Monday to it just in terms of recognizing that Tuesday evenings is a big meeting at that same time with the Planning Commission. And with those comments, would throw it open to our discussion and coming to a point where we either take no action and leave it the way it is or make some change.
Yeah, and I've done a little soul searching myself with that regards, and based on the conversation I'm hearing from citizens, that there would be greater attendance and greater participation if there was at least a evening meeting that traditional day worker could attend. Like I said, it doesn't do much for me either way. I own a business. I'm missing work right now for this. If I don't have to be here during the day, I'll have to be, I'll be somewhere. I won't be at home either way. Let's put it that way. So I would be interested in potentially, I don't know the scheduling piece with I hate to move planning off center or whatever with the Tuesday, but if Monday or whatever was agreeable to some, if nothing else, I just think a more informed populace, and if that's what it takes to get them there, would help alleviate a lot of the misunderstandings and things like that, and if that's the case. Now, the proof would be in the pudding as to who shows up. That's why I like the idea of a trial basis. I don't know what amount of time that trial should extend to, but that would be, I think, an earnest effort on our part to try and meet folks halfway.
I'm open to both Monday and Tuesday, but my only concern with having the meeting on different days, it's already going to be confusing enough to have inconsistent meeting times. If we have inconsistent meeting days, are we going to accomplish what we set out to do, which is engaging more people? So I think there's going to be a marketing piece to this, no matter which way we spin it, whether we do one meeting in the morning, one in the evening, or do study sessions or budget sessions in the evening. We just need to recognize that if we don't put forth some effort to get the word out to the public, it's not going to matter when we meet.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is communicate to the populace of the change and be consistent with that over time, that we have a more informed citizenry, because it's out of sight, out of mind. And so if we fluctuate between a Monday and a Tuesday, that may be an issue. Consistency is important, but really communication in all forms with new social media and the way it is and so on, and our media and so on. We just have got to do a better job of communicating the upcoming meeting times and the agendas and so on.
And to that end, the Planning Commission only meets once a month. So if it's on the third
No,
Tuesday.
they meet twice a month.
They do meet twice a
They
month?
can meet the
They
same
meet-
days that we do.
Okay.
They meet the same times we do.
I thought they only met once.
It'd have been an easy if they only met once a month.
Yeah.
And we've talked about once a month for the planning commission, but then it can slow a development up.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
We hear all that all the time.
We don't want to do that.
I'm going to be real honest. Right now, I have a commitment every Monday night of the month, unless it is a 5-Monday month, like this month. So I'm not terribly excited about meeting on a Monday night. However, that said, if we would have to choose one, I would far prefer the third Monday as opposed to the first.
I feel like Monday's off. I mean, it'd be more convenient for me, honestly, but I think for the citizenry, it wouldn't, because then they'd have to remember on Tuesdays you meet in the morning, and on the third Monday you meet in the evening.
I know what you're saying, Jay.
I think we need to keep it on Tuesdays, and I know that that's really inconvenient for the planning commission, but if we want to give it a real good shot of having an impact, we have to keep it on the same day.
Okay.
That's valid.
Well, we've narrowed down to Tuesdays, the way it sounds. Do we have a preference between the meetings and/or looking only at study and budget study sessions?
Well, if we were looking at study and budget sessions, then you could have them on the 2nd and 4th, and you wouldn't have any conflict with planning.
Right.
That's a good point.
Wait, say that one more time for the slow people, please.
If you were looking at doing study and budget sessions as opposed to an actual meeting, you could have those on the 2nd and the 4th, and you would not conflict with the planning commission.
I say it'd almost be better to do the trial with those then, like John recommended.
I think the other thing, just to point out, is that the concern really was mentioned to the council not getting out into specific neighborhoods for what I call kind of a town hall meeting, if you will. As we looked at this morning, this is a business. I mean, it's not just that people come in, you're going to just talk about everything all day long, but at a town hall meeting or a neighborhood meeting, which we're doing some of those in some of the other neighbors, we have planning staff, engineering staff talking about upcoming projects, and very informative. I think the county does once a quarter, they have a meeting out in the different Reno County Commissioner districts, and just invite people to just talk about what are the issues and what's going on, and not a specific agenda. We're going to go through these items, and if you're not interested in that, then you got 5 minutes. And so I think there's other ways to get at the point of getting involvement. I think we do that a lot, but with study sessions and budget meetings, which budget is something that affects everybody, and you guys know how budget meetings have went in the past.
That's
and
about a two-month process.
yeah, so there's opportunities
easily.
to do that trial too, but that's just my 2 cents. Staff will do whatever you guys want to do.
I don't know if it's appropriate.
I wanted to make one comment. I think last meeting I talked about a year-long trial. I've had some second thoughts about that. You mentioned a trial, but I'm thinking more like 6 months.
I think 6
That we ought to
months
be able
would
to
be very
have a
adequate.
sense one way or the
Yeah.
other, whether or not there's participation. So just to toss that out there as well.
Yeah, to be honest, the pragmatist in me, I've been involved in a variety of organizations over my lifetime, and I've had several who have said, oh, well, if we just change our meeting times, we will have more people come. Never happens.
You gain some, you lose others.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wash. If somebody really wants to be there, they're going to be there.
Sure.
If it's an issue that affects them, they will be there. And I'm not sure it's a panacea,
Right.
is what I'm saying.
So we'd go the first Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. and the second Tuesday at 9 a.m. and the fourth Tuesday at 5:30 for 6 months.
No,
Are you
we're
talking about
first and
regular
third.
meetings,
I'm
John?
talking about regular meetings.
The first and third that we were
First and
looking
third.
at.
So that would stay constant or stay the same. right?
We've been meeting first and thirds.
When we were talking
I'm trying
about
to
second
avoid
and
the planning
fourth,
commission conflict.
we were
Well, that
talking
would be
about
if we were doing study
sessions.
sessions
Yeah,
or
study
budget
sessions on the
sessions.
second and fourth would not conflict with.
So another way to do
Only
it is
the-
keep it at 9 on the first and third, but any study or budget sessions, do it on the second or fourth at 5:30.
In the evening, yeah.
I'm open to either way, whatever you guys think is.
Or if you want,
Dave, you sound ready to make a motion.
Do I?
Oh, I know, you sounded a bit, a moment ago. If you're not, you're not.
No. I was actually going to invite Andy. He's kind of our lone constituent. Looks like the rest of the staff and Hutch News. But we're trying to reach the constituency and all that. And I think what John's pointing out and all that is maybe people don't even understand what's happening at the council meeting, that it is a business meeting, and that there's going to be certain items, whereas a town hall, like you'd suggested at one point, might be more appropriate to that. I'm also with John. The budget
With
session is
parameters.
probably more beneficial to all parties involved as well. But I'd like to hear your thoughts, if it's okay, John.
Yes.
Sorry, Steve invited him on.
Most definitely.
If we're worried about communicating the meeting to people, I can touch 3,500 people right now through Gossip Kansas, which is a Facebook page, and again, Common Sense Hutchinson, which is a Facebook page. I've got 265 members right now on the CSH, and I post the meetings, I post the agendas, and I invite everybody to come to the meeting, and I got to work.
Right.
I can't make it. I got to work. So I think the evening meetings would be very important. I think you would get the attendance at the evening meetings, and these people got a lot to discuss. That if they get their 5 minutes.
And that's what I was going to ask. In the meeting itself really only allows for that 5 minutes.
Right.
Everything else is going to be related to whatever's on the agenda, which may or may not have interest to them as well. But if it's a platform to air the grievances, is the 5-minute meeting going to be adequate to or
I believe
5-minute portion adequate
Yes,
to
sir.
satisfy them? Okay.
It's like my short thing earlier today. There are a lot of concerns, but I guess we're frustrated because, we can post the concerns, we can talk about the concerns, but they need a voice. We need a voice to, if anything, to make us feel better.
Sure.
That somebody's hearing us.
Well, I'd like to alleviate some of the miscommunication and whatever. I've read through some of the posts, and we're often not painted in a great light, and I get that, sometimes or whatever. But there's certain errors or fallacies in there that would be ideal to be able to address on a face-to-face as well. So I would embrace that opportunity also. This is why we came to that decision. Does that make sense, kind of
Yes, sir.
thing?
And some of the things that they do post, if I know the answer, then I can say, no, you're wrong.
Sure.
And I do that. And if I don't know the answer, I try to research it. And usually between the people, they go, no, this is the way it is.
Right.
This is why the business is leaving Hutch. I mean,
Sure.
everybody's blaming the city, but it's not. We know it's not the city.
Business decision.
Yes,
Sure,
sir.
Sure.
So we're kind of working both ways.
Oh, yeah.
So we'd like you all to work with us to enlighten everybody.
Thanks, Andy.
So appreciate it. Well, I like the idea of the continuity again. If nothing else, it alleviates another opportunity for an excuse. I didn't know when the meeting was or something like that. It would make it easier on everybody. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was just kind of thinking out loud.
Feel free. I'm rambling.
I would suggest that we go ahead and leave our meetings as is, and we'll start budgeting, March?
Coming up, April.
April?
I mean,
May.
meetings in May, probably, yeah,
Maybe.
through the summer.
Maybe prior to that, you might look at perhaps setting up a town hall. I know we're having town halls that relate to planning, but that has a set topic, so this would not be an appropriate venue. To maybe doing some kind of an area town hall in March on maybe the 2nd or the 4th.
April,
yes. Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, we're already
The
through
month.
March.
Yeah, I know. I'm a month behind. Yeah, and maybe look at, toward the end of the month, maybe doing a town hall somewhere so that people could feel like that.
Coordinate that with each one of you. I really, and you think I've got a bit, like I said, we're going to do whatever, but
Yeah.
some of the issues that this gentleman's talking about are issues that are going to come through in those kind of meetings.
Yeah.
If I've got a
Yeah.
concern about a neighbor's property code, well, they pick up the phone and call City Hall, and we send
Right.
out a notice and we take care of that. But
There are
other budgetary issues, there are avenues for people to call if they've got a neighborhood concern. It happens every day.
Yeah.
So it's not going to address those kinds of things, because that opportunity is already there.
Perhaps it's making them more aware.
The one comment I'd like to make about budget or study sessions, unless we would alter the flow, those are topic and purpose oriented.
Topic driven.
And I unless we open a period of time to say,
Yeah, we could.
and we could, but we haven't at least had a public comment session, public comment section of that. So we could and devote whatever, 15, 20 minutes or whatever, and open it up before we begin studying budget or whatever the topic is. So I just toss that out.
Seems like your suggestion of a town hall is more in line with what people who are upset about their inability to come here are needing. And maybe that's just something we should do on a regular basis, regardless of when it is, what time it is. In addition to our meetings, in addition to our study sessions, just plan one of those every quarter or twice a year where we hear from people.
Yeah, kind of like the county activity.
Could the city hall be made available for an evening town hall?
Yeah, I think we'd probably want to do it in the neighborhood somewhere.
Yeah, we don't have to do it in City Hall.
Like in a school somewhere, in that neighborhood, just that's close by, churches, we'd have those. Be better probably than having them all right here. Probably get.
That might get at what we're trying to accomplish a little better.
I fear not trying the council meeting only because that's what was requested.
Right.
But if the only reason I would deviate from that is if we did create some sort of platform that would accomplish that same deal, and if that's met through the study session, budget sessions, town hall meetings in the local areas or whatever, I think I would be okay with that. But again, that also needs to be communicated. Okay, you're still going to have that same opportunity that you would be afforded at a city council meeting. You're going to have the attention of the individuals that can hold sway or whatever. But it's just not going to be the council meeting. That's the only if we can afford them that kind of opportunity, then I would be open to it personally.
Yeah, I think one year, maybe the first year that I was on council, we did have a budget meeting and had some citizens attend. And they made some comments. They had some concerns they wanted to talk about, and haven't seen anybody subsequently.
Yeah.
So.
Did you, if you want to, yeah.
I think the idea for the people is they want to be a part of the city council. They want to attend a city council meeting. I just don't think a town hall is going to, maybe in addition have a town hall.
I'd be okay with that.
Every 2 months or something. I think that should be an addition, but not take place of opening the city council in this format for people to come to. I think then they're going to feel better about that instead of meeting at a school and addressing things. I think we feel more that things would get done here instead of a town hall. If we talk about something like the council meetings being held in the evenings, that gets put onto an agenda. Is that going to work with the town hall? I mean, are we going to have a recorder there?
I think it would just as easily.
Yeah.
I think it would be.
We could do whatever we want.
Well, I was going to say, due to technical difficulties, we were able to air it the other day via a phone or an iPad. So it could be.
I didn't mean recording like that, but I meant recording.
Somebody taking minutes.
What the people are saying.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
somebody taking minutes.
We drag Linda along.
So it's written.
Wherever we go.
Right. Yeah, it's a record. Yeah, a record. Yeah.
Yes, some sort of record.
Really.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm fine either way.
Yeah. I kind of lean towards the evening meeting again, just because again it's what I'm hearing they want. Now, bear in mind, you might find that's not what you want. As you attend the meetings and you're like, I can't talk, or I don't know when to talk, or I don't understand how it works. You may very well find out that's not the case.
So first Monday at 9, third Monday at 5:30.
No, for Tuesday.
Or Tuesday, I'm sorry.
That's what I was suggesting, Tuesday.
I'm sorry. I was trying to get Nancy riled up there.
Yeah, not Monday.
First Tuesday at 9, Third Tuesday at 5:30.
5:30.
6 months trial.
Is that a motion?
It can be a motion if you, yeah, sure. Sure.
And Planning Commission, we need to talk about what they're going to do.
About the start time. So
Yeah.
we've already noticed the May 1st meeting, and I sent out something yesterday. I'm sorry, I shouldn't talk about. I sent out something yesterday, and an applicant is potentially going to apply for the May 15th meeting.
Ooh.
So my suggestion would be if you start, that it should be in June.
Yeah, I mean, we've
And
got to bring
that's
back
okay.
a charter ordinance that changes the dates and times,
you.
and so we've got to give.
We have a
don't-
process. We don't, not for this.
Okay.
Right, because I believe it just says we hold 2 meetings. It doesn't specify when those meetings are.
Right.
That's what it says.
Okay.
Boy, I'm good.
But we do need to allow Janet
Sometimes.
time to get her schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need
Well,
to-
and also
yeah.
time to let the public know
And
what we're doing.
staff accordingly and all interested parties.
Okay, June trial.
Starting June, that'll run us through the end of the year then. right?
June for 6 months, yeah.
Okay.
Is that your
Yeah.
motion?
That's my motion.
I second that emotion. No, I
Linda
second
has that all.
that.
Just a comment, and I don't want to belabor it or really, but we can maybe talk about it later on. But we do have 2 town hall meetings coming up, as Janet indicated. One's already scheduled for Southeast. There'll be another one for Southwest. We might want to continue that, given kind of John's comment, and hit Northeast and Northwest
I think
later in
that's
the
a
year.
great
Oh,
idea.
yeah.
But we can look to that later on.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Then the call roll, and the motion is first Tuesday, 9 a.m. meeting, third Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. meeting,
Beginning in
effective
June.
June, and we'll go for 6 months as a trial.
That's
That-
the motion.
That's the motion, okay.
Is that the second?
And that is the second.
And that is the second. Call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Deckent?
Yes. Next item.
Item 9, report of city officials.
Jade?
Citywide cleanup, April
right.
28th. I'm sure we'll hear about it next time, but wanted to give people ample notice. Pretty excited about that event. That's it.
Nothing at
David?
this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Nancy?
Nothing.
John?
Well, if we continue this discussion, we'll be here till 5:30, and then we'll have our first meeting.
We'll have the first dinner meeting.
Sorry about that. I'm going to ask the city manager to speak to the state fair issue, to share with us as much as you can, because I know it's a very volatile issue, but from the standpoint of what may be transpiring in Topeka is important, and I think it would be important for the general public to have a little better feel for exactly where you see things are at this point.
Well, I mean, my opinion is the State Fair has been here 105 years, and it's going to be here another 105 years. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
The dialogue, as you read in the paper from a representative, was not ever any serious intent that they would follow through with that or interest in that. It was just to get a conversation going, which obviously that worked. But what's frustrating is that conversation with the fair has been ongoing for decades.
I was going to say, we hadn't
We've-
dropped that.
We've got a great relationship with them. We're working on a list of services. I've been told by State Fair members that what we've done in the past doesn't matter, but to me it does. We, the city and
Yeah, I
county,
think
committed to $3 million worth of capital improvements to the State Fair under an agreement that we would match the State Fair and the state of Kansas legislature, which the only party that didn't fulfill their obligation was the state. So to me, that matters. We also provide well over right at $100,000 worth of services to the fair each year during the fair, throughout the fair. The list goes on. And I do realize that in exchange for that, we're getting use of that property from the fair where our splash park is and where the tennis courts is. And so that's part of the lease requirements there. But we go well beyond that. But that's a great partnership that we've enjoyed with the fair for many years. And so, so does this community, does this city, does this county care about the state fair? I don't think there's any question about that. And that's what's frustrating, because there's a thought out there that we don't care, that we do take it for granted, that we don't understand the economic impact, because we do. We had a conversation last week with the city manager, the mayor, Reno County Commission representative Gary Meager, and the chamber to just talk about next steps. And I think we all agreed that we're going to take a look at some potential other, maybe funding opportunities that might be available for the fair on an ongoing basis. We talked about transient guest tax increases, use of existing transient guest tax. We talked about diverting the sales tax the city gets from the state fair, just like the issue up there now, that they're talking about the state portion would stay with the fair. I think we need to explore that. And the mayor and I talked yesterday, suggest that maybe he and I set up a meeting with State Fair General Manager, interim, and their fair board, just to kind of talk a little bit about what's transpired. Because as I read the newsprint, the fair board wasn't really involved in this bill that was introduced, this infamous bill. And so just kind of see where we're at. I still think we've got a great relationship. Now, you all know the stormwater utility has been an issue. And I talked to a former fair board member that was a part of our discussion probably 4 years ago, maybe 5, about the impact on the fair and what we were looking at in terms of being able to provide a credit, substantial credit. And we're still having those conversations. I've seen a couple other proposals that Bruce has put together. And we just haven't been able to kind of figure out, what that looks like. And so to say that we're not talking, there's not communication, is just wrong. And I think it's an individual that had no idea what really was going on, particularly if he didn't talk to the State Fair Board about this. That's what's kind of puzzles me a little bit. But
the individual didn't talk to you.
Yeah, and I've settled down a little. Last week was a tough week because there was a lot of pointed fingers about what we're doing or not doing. And we don't even talk about the number of the amount of money we spend up there each year with our fire department during the fair.
Right.
The EMS services that are provided at no cost. And so the number of volunteers, I don't have any idea how many volunteers there are from this community that work up there, but I suspect there's a lot. So to say that there's not support from the Hutchinson community is just flat wrong. And I think the bill, the conversation, because the bill that's being discussed now is a bill that would capture the state's portion of sales tax generated during the fair and remain with the fair, which is about $350,000 a year. And so as the legislators, they're saying, well, we're giving back money. What's the local community doing? And so a lot of this conversation is really come from that bill, not the bill that was introduced by the representative to the north. Yeah, separate issue. And so I kind of get that. And we provided information last year to Senator Berger about the support that the city, and I'm talking about just what we provide. There's a lot of other entities in this city that provide support there as well. So hopefully we're back on track, and I think that if we can get a sit-down meeting with the State Fair, we can maybe talk about kind of where we go from here, talk about the stormwater detention areas that we've talked about for the last 3 or 4 years, and then maybe, bigger discussion is future dedicated funding. So I don't know if you all have any questions, because the letter we sent was not, specific. It just talked about additional, local dedicated funding. And
it reemphasized
David, you were there.
Yeah,
David was at the meeting too.
It reemphasized our commitment, if nothing else. It would be premature to talk any specific funding opportunities or whatever without knowing exactly where they're at. I think a lot of things fix themselves if that bill passes. And my understanding is passed the Senate side. It goes before the House at some point. A lot of that alleviates it. I was the same when I first read it. Where did this come from? Left field. And then as I read more into it, the more I got upset with it, that they questioned our level of commitment and to argue that we were taking for granted the fair. It appeared to me a deflection upon maybe the state taking for granted the fair by not living up to their opportunity or their funding level of our 50,000 stormwater feed versus their 1.7 million funding in the rears. I've also cooler heads prevail. And I think this will fix a lot of their woes if this bill were to pass. And then we're providing a lot of great opportunities to help offset those fees that we're talking about as well, that have very little impact to the fare, specifically to their parking and things like that. So I think conversation, it was already happening. Now it's a little more to the forefront. I think we'll be able to get something figured out.
That's all I have to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say. Forrest.
And I had that on my note just simply, and to emphasize, since the concern was conversation, that John and I, and possibly the Vice Mayor as well, since he was involved in last week's meeting in my absence,
I would enjoy that if I
we'll be approaching the fair management and board to have a conversation and see where that takes us. Okay, John?
Just speaking of meetings, reminder of the floodplain or flood map update open house that is April the, what's the date? April 20. Which is it? 10th, April 10th, yeah. And that's out at the fire training facility. I thought I had that notice. What's the times on that, Bruce?
2 o'clock in the afternoon.
2 o'clock? 2 o'clock till late in the evening. It'll be an open house format where people can come in. There'll be representatives from all the agencies that can specifically talk about their property and give them information.
So there isn't a specific presentation time, but rather there'll be a static display that people
I
can
think
look
it's more of a, yeah.
Q&A, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually being sponsored and put on by FEMA personnel as well as the State Department of Agriculture, Water Resources Division for the new floodplain mapping, which they've got preliminary maps in place that show that some properties may be in floodplains now. It has not been completely adopted. There's going to be representatives there from FEMA, from the state. There's going to be representatives there from planning, from engineering. Also, South Hutch and Reno County are going to have folks there. We're going to have computers set up, so if somebody comes in and says, I live at 806 West 11th Avenue, and it looks like I'm going to be in it, where is it? We can pull it up and talk to them, and it's more of an educational program and process.
Okay, but there's not a presentation. It's coming in.
No,
and
sir.
Yeah, just an
I
open
look at the
house.
maps,
Come
I
as you
look at
please.
my property or whatever and can talk to
Right.
people that are there.
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct.
That's all I had, Mayor.
All right. I'm open for a motion for adjournment. Anybody want to adjourn?
Yeah, around there, right?
So moved.
So move. Second.
Okay.
2 motions and 2 seconds. Call roll, please.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Iris De Carvalho?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes.
Decken?
Yes.
Kind of due for a long one again, I think.
I don't know if we were due. I knew this would be long.